know what.
It looks like New York, that or Chicago. Hey everybody, how are y'all? So we're rolling into another week. I'm gonna try to do these lives every week, whether it's me, whether I have the gang with me, however it works out. I just want to get back into, well, not back into because I never was in it like that, but I just want to get into doing more lives and more consistent discussions about these conversations that matter. I'm here today with we got Blanche Robinson to my left. How are you today, sir?
Doing well. How are you doing?
Doing good, doing good. I also have Keisha King. Oh
Hello,
no, what happened to
everyone.
Blanche? That's weird. I'm gonna work on that in the meantime. And then we also have Craig Long. How are you today, Craig?
What's up, y'all? How y'all doing, man? Doing good. Blessed and highly favored.
Cool, cool, cool.
Amen, amen.
What's up? What's up, King?
Hey, so y'all talk, Keisha and Craig, y'all talk to each other while I try to figure out
How,
Chuck
what you
and
been up to, man? What's new?
Oh man, lots of things, lots of things. So I am still building my show, the Keisha King Show. I'm in the process of writing a book. Um, what else am I doing? I am raising two little girls to be traditional women one day. I am in the fight for our faith and for our freedom. Um, so yeah, it's a lot going on, but honored to be in all of this with all of you.
Nice, man. Sound like you got your hands full.
Yeah.
okay,
What about
so
you? What you been up
looks like
to?
I finally got everybody back up. So let me get my mug off the screen. Cool.
Chuck, you got Chuck here? Is that Chuck right there?
Yeah, you see Chuck?
Yeah, I see Chuck.
Okay. All right, so I'm gonna start bringing y'all back in one by one. Okay, so we got myself. Hey, how are y'all? Still working out the kinks. Got a little bit better at it, but you know, it is what it is. So we got my partner in crime, none other than Mr. Chuck Littleton. How are you today, sir?
What's up, man? Can y'all hear me?
Yep, we can hear you good.
Yeah,
All right,
All
we
right,
got
cool.
Mr. Blanche Robinson. How are you today?
doing good. How you doing?
Good, good, good. And then we got Miss Keisha King,
Hello.
and then we got the great Mr. Craig Long.
What's up, everybody?
All right, so here we go with a live. All right, so today I wanted to talk about three different topics. And typically, whenever I do these lives, we never really get to all the topics, and that's fine. I'm going to try to keep this under 3 hours this time. And I know Miss Keisha King, she has a something that she got to get to at 9:30, so she's going to have to bounce off after about an hour and a half. And then my other guests, as they feel fatigued and tired, they can fall out as they please. So, um, I wanted to talk about something that's been heavy on my heart, and that is the issue with black conservatives. I just wanted to get this out of the way. And I'm kind of torn on this particular topic because, on the one hand, far be it from me to try to assume that because a certain person holds a certain political ideology that they should believe exactly as I believe down the line. However, conservatism, as I understand it, is the belief in traditional values. Now, for me, my traditional values are rooted in my Christian faith. And so it's my Christian faith that informs how I view politics. And so when it comes to abortion, when it comes to healthcare, when it comes to any myriad of different issues and subjects, I look not to the conservative platform, the Republican platform, but rather to the Bible. And it just so happens that the Republican Party aligns more with my values than does the Democrat Party. But even still, I understand that there's a difference between grassroots Republicanism and Republican politicians in office. That's to say that there's a huge disconnect. Yes, the politicians are willing to use your values to run, to win your votes, to get elected. But when it comes to actually doing the business on the House floor, the Senate floor, and executive office, so on and so forth, they are more interested in what their funders have to say, what the cabal has to say, what the global elites have to say, than they do their own constituents. And so there's a huge disconnect between the two. As a Christian, I know at the end of the day, my king sits on the throne. Jesus Christ is my savior. He will come one day and all of this will come to an end. So I understand that. So I don't lose sleep over the fact that my guy didn't get into office. But even if my guy did get into office, I understand that, the world is going to do what the world does, and that's all there is to it. But at the same time, when it comes to Democrats, when it comes to leftism, when it comes to Marxists, I understand that if they were in office, the burn will be a lot faster. With the Republicans in office, it's a slow burn, but with Democrats in office, it's a very rapid dumpster fire, so to speak. But anyway, that's the aside. What I have a problem with, though, is when it comes to a certain sect of Black Republicans, and I would venture to say a lot of them, probably even most of them, at least those who are in the public eye, right? There is this tendency to try to, in a sense, yield to the preconceived notions that the left has in terms of what systemic racism is and whether it exists and all these different things. So they capitulate, and I wouldn't even say capitulate, they willingly give them the narrative, and they find themselves trying to do these little maneuvers to try to shift people to their side, but it never works because in the end, they just look pathetic. And this has been happening for over 60 years. And this is the reason why most Black Republicans believe that Martin Luther King is this great hero that we should all worship. But when you understand your history, and when you understand what really happened in terms of American history and quote unquote Black history, you begin to understand that many of these so-called civil rights leaders were themselves Marxists, and they are to blame for the fact that a lot of Black people vote in a monolithic way for the Democrat Party today. And so you can't claim the heroes that the left put up as to be our heroes, and then at the same time try to win people to your side. It just doesn't make any sense. But anyway, I wanted to pass it around and see what you all think of this problem that I see, or is it not a problem when it comes to these Black Republicans trying to do what they can in terms of yielding to certain preconceived notions that Black liberals have in order to win people to the so-called Republican Party. What say you all? Let's start with Ms. Keisha King.
Sure. First, let me just address Mr. Winston. No, wearing a black was not in the plans for everybody. It just happened that way. So that's funny. But yeah, so what I have noticed, I still consider myself, relatively new to the whole political scene. I started getting involved in 2017. And, of course, there were people involved long before, Black conservatives long before me. I came into the game, so to speak, with the idea that, God has spoke to my heart, my skin, and told me that my skin color had become an idol in my life. So that thought of, everything has to be Black, I'm so dedicated to being Black. I never had that. It was removed from the get-go. And so what I saw coming in, I say like the conscious Black conservatives that's what they call themselves. They tend to be the ones who try to cling to, this Blackness and things like that. And when I say they are progressives dressed in Republican clothes, and what I mean by that is they, just like what you said, Chad, they espouse some core conservative values, I guess, but they feel like they have to cling to certain traditions, not truths, but traditions, in order to win over Black Democrats. And I think that is another way to dumb people down, actually. I think you should approach everybody with truth. I think you should give them the respect to tell them the truth. That is real compassion. And I think the reason why they struggle to win over Black Democrats is because people know when you're not telling the truth. And so as much as you want to act like, oh, we have to say certain things to win them over, I just don't believe that. There are many people out there who will they will respect you more if they know that you're telling them the truth. Even if they don't believe it right away, I have had many conversations where people were like, "Oh, you're wrong, you're wrong, you're wrong." And then as time went by, I got the emails, I got the DMs. Yo, you were right. My bad. Like you were right. And now it's all love. And it's like if you are not telling them the truth, you won't ever get to the point where there is a respect there, because essentially many of these things, like, you know, the whole Martin Luther King thing, the NAACP, um, you know, they think they're saying something when they espouse these ideas like, you know, hating on certain people, or you know, like I think, you know, somebody said, you know, Candace Owens, and I say this behind the scenes. I will tell anybody this, regardless of what you think, it's, particularly with Candace, that woman has brought the conservative message to a level. When Kanye West retweeted her, or tweeted her, mentioned her name, that was a huge cultural moment for conservatism. And it brought the conversation to a place that it had never been before. And whether it be jealousy, whether it be, you know, whatever it was, people don't seem to understand what that meant. Um, and I think that that was a very needed and necessary thing. And people like her who are just telling the truth. I mean, you might not agree with her approach. You might not, you know, nobody agrees with everybody 100%. But for me, I'm just like, you have to respect what she was able to do. And a lot of times, you know, it's those conscious Black conservatives that harp on her, or harp on, you know, just certain people who you probably agree with them for like 99% of the, you know, their ideas. Why you gotta be like pouncing on them for the one thing that you don't agree with? So, you know, my thing is, tell people the truth, give them enough respect to tell them the truth. You don't have to pander. That it's like another level of pandering. You don't have to pander to anybody. Tell them the truth. And that's respect.
What about you? What about you, Blanche? What say you?
Um, I just think that most people want to keep their positions they have. So most folks will not be honest. Most people have certain fan bases. Most people have folks they're in bed with. Most people, you know, have their own little niche. So they're not going to really want to rock the boat. I listen to some Black quote unquote conservatives, and they have a lot of, in my opinion, progressive and liberal thoughts. Um, Especially when it comes around, when it talks about Republicans don't appeal to the I guess the Black community. But I push back on that, because the things that a Republican would say to the Black community probably wouldn't even care about. I mean, to be honest with you, so it's kind of hard to even come up with a strategy to even pitch if they only care about things like police brutality and voting rights. But I do see these Republicans, Black conservatives, who I think Keisha said it best earlier. They're really just progressives that's acting as, um, it's almost like, you know, this liberal ideology is crazy. Like, you know, it's out of control. So you kind of don't want to be a part of it, but you do kind of want to be a part of some of the talking points with, you know, Black folks being oppressed, and, you know, white people being bad and all this stuff. But I would just simply say that most people have a certain fan base, a demographic they appeal to. They don't want to ruin that. So I don't know. I just think the truth is the best thing, but that's me.
Yeah, I agree. What about you, Mr. Craig?
Um, what I'm gonna ask you to ask me the question again
Yeah.
about Black conservatives.
Yeah, so I guess my question was more or less, what is your thoughts on, just in general, whatever comes to your mind, I guess, on this idea of there being this kind of conscious Black conservative, this notion that this subsect of Black conservatives can, in a sense, win over Black Democrats by agreeing with certain premises that Black liberals have, namely that we're haunted by systemic racism, that all these disparities that exist are due to this issue with white supremacy, such and so forth. This idea that we need policies that will quote unquote help black people.
Mm-hmm.
What's your thoughts on that in general?
Thank you for re-asking it. Thank you for reiterating the question. I just wanted to make sure I answered right and how I truly feel about it. I think what the issue is the black conservative is still operating in the premise of identifying only with black. I'm conservative, but I just so happen to be black. Am I trying to be colorblind to the fact that I'm a black man? They're still subscribed, that black conservative that I call them the pro-black conservative is is how I would define it or reference what I think that we're talking about here. I think that they're still subscribed to the black is the king and queen of all. The same culture war that we're going through now that all of us see it seems to be a problem. And I don't want to speak for everybody on the panel, but it seems to be that this premise that black has removed the position of God. They idolize their skin color. So those conservatives that identify themselves as just black conservative, I think that they're still operating in the premise of putting black in front of everything else and above all. And we know culturally with the culture war that we have going on, with those that idolize their skin color over everything, including God, it has become very problematic, in my opinion, because a lot of the things that they say that they're fighting against and things that they want to stop, they're actually perpetuating. They don't want racism anymore, but yet they act in a form of being racist. They don't want to be discriminated on anymore, but yet here they are. They're acting in forms of discrimination, and it's to the point now where they are actually justifying positive segregation. They're fighting racism with racism and so on and so forth. So I think that those black conservatives are still operating in that progressive, which I don't call progressive because you have to be actually progressing in something. I call them regressives. They're still operating in that realm of that ideology. The black conservatives it's almost like they're toed in the line. They have one foot in and one foot out. It's like they recognize the truths that people like myself, a conservative that it just so happens is black. I'm willing to call it out. They know that those truths are true, but they still hold on to the sense of, but black folks, we can't again re-putting themselves back into a position to where they are trumped over everything, including God, which I will never want to be a part of. So just to keep it short, I think that those black conservatives, the pro-black conservative, is still operating in that premise of being a liberal, a regressive, a Marxist propaganda pusher, so on and so forth. I'll keep it simple.
Do you think that that they're being nefarious, or do you think they genuinely don't know any better? Because the thing is like whenever we were making Uncle Tom 2, and a lot of the research that I was doing while editing and while going to libraries and while digging through archives and all the things that I was doing, I found that a lot of the information that I was uncovering was, in a sense, validating some of the things that I already suspected, but it was right there in front of my eyes in black and white. And then other information, I was like, wow, I never even knew that. You know what I'm saying? And so it's like, but you begin to understand that had I had this piece of information a long time ago, it would have shaped my philosophy and how I look at politics far differently than what it has heretofore, if that makes sense. So do you believe that some of these people are operating, having understood what's going on in the world really, with regard to there's not actually this thing known as quote unquote white supremacy. There's not police looking for the next black person to kill, all these different things. Um, do you think that they understand that, but are still willing to say the necessary things to win people over, quote unquote? Or do you think they genuinely believe that all this stuff is going on?
I think that it's social pressures. I think that as someone that is holding those values, if they claim themselves to be a conservative and they're just so happen to be black, if they're still subscribed to that ideology of one foot in, one foot out, that black is beautiful, black love, black is king and queen, black trumps everything, even including God, which they don't realize that they're doing. I think with the social pressures of them just telling the truth and trying to stick to what's right versus wrong, I think the social pressures of that strong ideology that is so tough to break, and I guess it's going to take time for, just like it took years of programming, I guess it's going to take time and time and years of just deprogramming and even with myself, I'll be transparent. Um, I'm conservative in my values, but just like most people, they say they have a Blexit, like somehow they've exited this particular Democratic Party or the idea. To me, it's more the ideology, not so much a democratic anything, because there was a point in my life I didn't know nothing about politics. And I even question myself, even today, I'm not fully well-rounded in politics, but I still have regressive attitudes, shall I say, meaning like there's parts of, if we're going to go political lines, there's parts of where I just get frustrated with being, there's no other option when it comes to politics or who I vote for when it comes politically, because it's the binary of Republican, Democrat. So I obviously, with my values, they're going to lean more towards a Republican party, who to vote for Republicans. So what I'm finding is I still have these regressive attitudes of, I don't want to do law and order. Like I'm ready to put the gloves on and bust them upside their head the same way they've been doing us. So I think it's going to just take years of just redefining and getting more clarity of exactly just weeding that mentality, that destructive mentality out. I think that's the best way to describe it.
That's a very good point. A very good point. Take it away, Chuck.
It reminds me, Chad. I know you probably remember a reel you posted not too long ago with you and Anomaly, and he asked you a similar question. And do you know what I'm talking about, Chad? And I just love I love your response.
Which one
I'm
was
trying
that?
to remember. You posted a reel. Anomaly asked you a question about something in terms of how, what is it going to take to reach folks, as far as like who
Oh
are
yeah, I
more.
remember.
Yeah. I mean, your response just knocked it out the box. But you're absolutely right, man. I mean, folks, uh, look, again, it's sort of like all things for the party, right? Whether you're talking about the Democrat Party or the Republican Party. Of course, the Democrat Party is a statist party. It embraces the statist ideology, and the Democrat Party exists for the sole purpose of empowering the party, right? It's sort of like what Saul Alinsky taught, that the issue is never the issue. The issue is always the revolution. And so you have to have power in order to foment the revolution. I think of a couple of examples, Chad, and I think you and I have talked about these things privately. Again, it's sort of like, well, come over to the Republican camp because they're willing to do things that the Democrat Party has promised to do, but has not done. You look at the prison reform measures that Trump implemented or during his tenure, right? And you say, well, the Democrat Party has always been talking about how they were going to pursue criminal justice reform and this, that, and third. And if you look at, the Democrat Party, they're the ones who are responsible for all these massive so-called crime bills and what have you. When the incarceration rate increased. And it's funny because those who consider themselves to be conservatives like to troll is what I pretty much look at it as, trolling liberals when they talk about this, because if you look at, it's sort of like pointing out the hypocrisy of the left, because if you look at the things that, some of the things that they emphasize, or some of the things that they have issue with, is the massive growth of the prison industrial complex. And so they say, well, you are so quick to back Democrat politicians, not realizing that it is the Democrat Party that put your loved ones in prison. And I'm sitting back saying to myself, well, as someone who adheres to truth more so than I adhere to anything else, the Democrat Party and Joe Biden and Hillary Clinton for saying things like black folks or black men are super predators and this, that, and the third, that doesn't make Hillary Clinton a racist. Joe Biden being a part of every a criminal a bill, a crime bill since the late 1970s isn't why Joe Biden is a racist necessarily. That doesn't have anything to do with why the prison population is the way it is. We need to look at the behavior on the ground. I dare make the case that Joe Biden's participation in the 1994 crime bill, for example, is one of the good things that Joe Biden has ever done, because we look at crime and how out of control it was in the 1990s. And so the folks say, well, vote for Trump or vote for Republicans because they'll give you what you want. And to your point, Chad, I think that's why you're asking this question. That's not the issue. And that's not the question, because we're simply, again, being sort of like a progressive light. Look at the HBCU deal, right? And they said, well, how much money did Trump give HBCUs versus how much money did Obama give HBCUs? Yeah, become a Republican, because, again, Republicans are willing to give you what you want. But we never stop to ask the question, well, should HBCUs be given all this funding? What purpose or what goal does an HBCU serve? How many of us even know the history of the HBCU and what happened to the HBCU starting in the late 1950s, when a lot of these East Coast progressives and East Coast Marxists were going to the South. And because, a lot of these, I look at, for example, and I won't be long, Chad, I'll pass it back to you. I don't want to be rude to the rest of the panel, but I look at the case of a man like Howard Zinn, who was given his position by the first black and first male president at Spelman College, a man by the name of Albert Manley. Albert Manley wanted to uplift the credibility, the academic and educational credibility of the HBCU by bringing on Ivy League educated instructors, mainly those who had PhDs. And Howard Zinn, and of course, and I talked about the Khrushchev report in the past when I was on a live with Kulheem, Craig, and Blanche, when I talked about the political and cultural effects of the Khrushchev report. A lot of disenchanted Stalinists were trying to find ways to further the cause and further the goal of American communism. And they pretty much saw the civil rights movement as the new thing that they can latch their hooks into. And so to go back to a man like Howard Zinn, he fled the East Coast because he sought refuge at the HBCU because he saw it as a way for him to evade the watchful eye of the FBI during the era of McCarthyism. And so, again, the HBCU in my Spelman College, of course, began as a Baptist seminary. I think it was founded by freed slaves who would come together for Bible study, and it grew into the Spelman College that we know of today. But again, a lot of these white Marxist progressives went to these HBCUs and corrupted them, particularly in the case of a man like Howard Zinn. But how many conservatives actually know this history? How many conservatives even know anything about this? Many of them don't know. And the reality is that, to your point, Chad, there's not enough stress on education and understanding. When folk begin to show an interest in what is going on this side of the political aisle, we have to cut them off at the threshold and tell them, or try to stress upon them that you have to leave your liberalism at the door because we do things differently over here. I'm not going to placate and pander to your preconceived notions. I have to rewire everything that you thought you knew if you plan on remaining, here. Same thing, same deal. I look at, Malcolm X and how Malcolm X was, warning black folks about white liberals and so on and so forth. Well, I mean, of course, any one person can say something in a moment that I agree with, but on a whole, I reject Malcolm X completely. I reject him completely. And many, I dare make the case that once Malcolm X was thrown out of the Nation of Islam, he became more dangerous because he began to embrace Marxism even more. Again, won't go into a whole thing, but the reason why I brought that up is again to show, and you'll go to a lot of Black conservatives social media content, and their whole pages is strewn about with all sorts of comments and quotes and images of Malcolm X, which again I think is quite appalling. And again, this pragmatic morality is what I call. I know you all have seen the and I'm not saying that there's an easy way, because I'm not sure if I have the answer, but what they're saying in the chat and what I agree with is that of course it starts with character, and Blanche has said in some of his recent shows that if you approach Black folks with things that are actually going to help them, they're going to reject it. They're going to reject it because they are there's something is going on there that is far more fundamental than any particular political party can solve. But the last point now, and I'll fall back. It reminds me of that scene in The Dark Knight. I know you all have seen The Dark Knight when Batman takes the one guy, Maroni. He takes him up to the top, and he's trying to get information on the Joker. And he drops him and breaks his leg, and he's doing his whole Batman thing, trying to intimidate the guy. And he said, "Man, somebody has to know something about this guy. What do we know? Tell me something." He has to have friends. He said, "Man, have you seen this guy?" He said, "There's only one way to stop the Joker, and you know how, because everyone is hip to you. Everyone is hip to your game. You got rules. He has no rules." So again, it's the Batman Joker paradox. What can we do as conservatives, considering the fact that we have an objective moral code that is biblically anchored? The left has no such thing. So how do you defeat a foe that has no scruples? It's not an easy thing to answer. And I don't know if I figured it out yet.
When you speak of Howard Zinn, you're talking about the guy that wrote the history, or I guess the history,
The People's History of the United States.
History of America.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, that's what I'm talking about, Craig.
That was a dissertation if I ever heard
in my
one.
prison days, I read Howard Zinn's book when I was part of the Pan-African Association. So I read I read Howard Zinn, but I did not know the history of what you just described.
Oh yeah, Craig, I could go long, but again, it's five of us, so I'm not gonna hog the light. But I could give a whole breakdown on Howard Zinn. Yeah, man,
He's like what's her name? The one that loves to show the maps. What's her name? What's that white lady's name with the short hair?
Jane Elliott.
Jane Elliott. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, but Howard Zinn again. Howard Zinn is the mentor of Alice Walker.
Yeah.
But again, I'll pause because I don't want to.
So
I just want to really quick. I would just say, I think one thing that we need to realize with the left and the Democrat Party in general, and this is actually what my book is going to be about, or is about, it's that we're not. Lately, people will say, "Oh, woke, it's a religion." It's not a religion. It is a cult. That is different from a religion. Religion is something that has more of a time-tested feature to it. Cults are typically more novel, and they have a specific things that they do to indoctrinate you. One thing, for instance, with the Democrat Party, love bombing. That's one of the things that cults do. The Democrat Party just loves bomb. "Oh, you're so great as a Black person. We just love Black people. They'll come over here to us. We'll take care of you." Love bombing, isolating you. There's a lot of different things that happens when you're in a cult that gets you into the hypnotic state that people are in. And if you notice, if you try to bring, if you ever speak to, I have a very personal history with cult. I have several family members that were in cults, very close family members. And if you try to bring truth to them, you cannot, they do not see it. It is only what the cult says. And if you try to, it's very similar to Democrats. If you try to show them the truth, I know probably all of us have, it is rejected. The truth is, and even to people who claim to be Christians, that was the first sign to me that we are dealing with something other than just, oh, I just support this political party because I happen to agree. Well, if it was simply just a support, it wouldn't be this difficult to talk to people. And when you're showing them the truth, be able to say, well, this doesn't, how do you reconcile abortion with your faith? They don't care about your faith when it comes to the Democrat Party. All they want to know is Democrat. In fact, they don't even care about you being Black, because if you are Black and Republican, they still will reject you or find fault with you or call you names or whatever. So that it occurred to me, okay, well, this is not about being Black. This is not about, this is just my value system. This is about politics to people. It is about allegiance to the party. It is a cult. And it is very difficult to, like Chuck was saying, it is difficult to get someone decoupled from a cult. It is a very intensive process. It's a lot. My suggestion is that we pray for people, because I am a fervent believer in prayer. And I think that is one of the best things that we can do as believers, is pray for these people, because they are truly in a spiritual stronghold. They are mentally they are, I don't want to say they're possessed, but they are certainly oppressed by a spirit that, I don't want to get too deep into all this. I came from church not too long ago. So anyway, it is gonna, I think it's gonna take a lot of prayer and again, telling people the truth, giving people the gospel.
Well,
yeah.
Keisha, so I hear what you're saying, and I agree in large part to your premise. But when it comes to the distinction between a religion and a cult, it is true that when it comes to Blacktivism, Black wokeism, whatever you want to call it, it does have some of the tenets of what we think of as a religion. But I do get your point in that it's more of a cult than it is a quote unquote religion. However, by making such a distinction, are you not dignifying, in a sense, Hinduism or one of these other false religions as being kind of a step above, because it's not a cult, it's a religion, so therefore it's more dignified? Does that question make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense.
Well, I'm just saying that religions, just in general, that are, they just tend to have a longer period of time in history. Just kind of like by the Webster Dictionary of what a religion is, not dignifying any particular one, just as a distinguisher of a cult and a religion. Just religions tend to have been around for a long time. I'm not, certainly not endorsing any other religion other than Christianity.
Yeah.
But just saying that by just Webster definition, religions tend to have a longer history of value to it.
But if we're talking about length of time, one of the points that you made is that this kind of reigning, this false love, this kind of self-love, as being one of the tenets of Blacktivism. To me, I find that to be similar to Satan coming to Eve and promising her that you would become a god yourself, choosing what's good and evil or knowing what's good and evil. So basically, he promised her to be in a position of a god. And when you see Blacktivists saying we're gods, we're kings, we're queens, we're this, we're that, to me, that's an age-old thing that Satan has been promising people since day one. Not day one, but you get what I'm saying. So is it like, you know what I'm saying? So it's like, I get what you're saying. I'm not trying to rebuff what you're saying, but
no, let's talk about it. Yeah. I think it's a human. I think that's like it's an aspect of humanity, of people wanting to be more enlightened. I can be like God. I can have more knowledge. I can have a special knowledge. Some cults are even like, a lot of cults are like that. If not all of them, many of them are like that. It's a veil of secrecy around them. Oh, we're doing what they like, what other people don't know about. This is a special knowledge that you have to have. So yeah, no, I think certainly some religious aspects are in cults. I mean, that's very true. Some of them actually claim to be Christian. Some of them claim to, have, they claim to be a part of a particular religion. They are far off from that religion. Typically, it's Christianity, but it's another gospel. It's not the gospel. But yeah, I mean, there is overlap in some aspects. But when you look at the whole picture, cults they're much more destructive. They have a certain way of how they do things. They have a certain way of how they approach people. They have a certain way of just how they function. And if you try to come out of it, that they will come after you, or they will totally disown you, like Jehovah Witnesses, Mormonism, Scientology, you name it, just about every cult. If you try to leave, there is punishment. Remember when AOC, she was campaigning, she was like, "Oh, we're gonna make the Democrat establishment. We're going to hold them accountable." Well, when she got in there and she was trying to do that stuff with Nancy and Chuck, they shut it down real quick, and they was like, "Either you fall in line, or we're not doing that." And you don't hear her say anything anymore. And so it is very dogmatic. And yeah, I mean, there are certainly some similarities, but I feel like if we're more precise with that, this type of it's brainwashing, that it is a cult and not a religion. I think we can just put a finer point on what the problem is.
Yeah, I would agree with that. You were about to say something, Chuck?
I was about to crack a joke. I meant to say this when I spoke for the first time at Chad. Let me tell you this, bro. I don't want to hear anybody accusing my boy Chad O. Jackson of not being black enough, because I'll tell you one thing, he always late. He always gonna speak these. Hey, look.
Hey,
supposed to be 7:30. I'm messing with you, bro. That's all I want to add a little levity. Y'all go ahead, man. I just had to say that. Because I'm sitting here in my computer, my wife walk in, she's like, "I thought y'all was supposed to start." I'm like, "Man, they got pushed to 7:50, man. You know, Chad. You know it wasn't going to start on time."
So,
yeah, you ain't black and right.
So thank you, is that Jahan, for the super sticker. Also, thank you, Lady T, always showing love. Thank you for the super sticker, or a super chat. I'm still trying to get familiar with it.
Marcus Hemingway.
Sorry? Oh, yeah.
I think Marcus did one as well.
Okay, thank you. Let's see here. Sneakerhead. Just want to make sure I shout out everybody who is showing love in the comment section. Manuel Luna. Thank you for everybody showing love right now. Let's see here. Sweet Moxo.
Sweet Mo Love.
Sweet Mo Love. There you go. And then thank you, Marcus, for the very hefty super chat. I really appreciate it. I think that's all of them for now. But I can already tell that this is going to be a very good panel. And I'm sad that Keisha has to bounce out early. But everything that you guys have said so far on that particular topic, I couldn't have said better myself. So I appreciate that. I did want to jump on over to this clip. This is actually old. It's from a few months ago. But let's get right on into it.
In charge of the reparations conversation. Number one, control of all black music must only be done through the black community. No non-African can control our music. Prince, if I was in charge of the reparations conversation, number one, control of all black music must only be done through the black community. No non-African can control our music. Prince, Michael Jackson, Whitney Houston, Biggie, Tupac, if the publishing, if the marketing, if the promotion, if the recording is not controlled by black people, that has to change. We own our own music.
So, Blanche, where does he get off trying to take ownership of a race of a specific artist's music?
Well, I'm more offended by his outfit than I am by what he said. He has the picnic tablecloth, the blazer on. So that's why I'm offended. But you know, my question is, Umar is talking like this, but who's going to control it? Who's going to control the masters and the publishing? Who's going to oversee it? Who's going to control all this black economics? Who's going to run it? Is it going to be him? Is it going to be the artist? Like, it's just funny that he's just saying this stuff because it sounds good, but realistically,
is he gonna run it like that school?
Huh?
Is he gonna run it like that money he raised for that
Right.
school?
Hello,
Right.
somebody.
Right. Come on. You know, it's just, so to me, he's talking about these artists' music, but can we agree that the music, for the most part, has been destructive? So we control the music, but it's still destructive. Like, I just, so yeah, he has a lot of nerve to even open his mouth about finances when, you know, where's the school? So, and then somebody said he had a school, but I'm like, you having a building with no kids in the classroom, that's not a school, that's just a building. So where are children actually sitting there?
So Keisha, how does it work whenever you're an artist and you know, the masters and everything like that? It's interesting to me because, you know, he kind of postures himself as though, you know, I'm this educated man, I'm all about education, education, education. And as, you know, Craig and Blanche just alluded to, he literally calls himself trying to build a school for quote unquote African kids, for African men in particular, African boys in particular. And so with that being the case, you would think that somebody who postures himself as an educated man would do the due diligence of educating himself on how masters work, on how ownership of one's music work, and things of that nature. It seems like what he's proposing with this whole, you know, we take ownership of our music, quote unquote, seems to be a very kind of pie in the sky, unrealistic thing. Yet he's on this radio program talking about it. How does that work in terms of ownership of music?
So it's funny because he's like, well, we're not going to let anybody else control it, but I want to control it. Like, what?
Right.
So, and I agree with y'all. If you can't even get your school off the ground, like, I'm supposed to trust you to get, you know, handle people's music and publishing, which is a whole, you know, it can be kind of complicated, some of those things should, you know, be separate. Anyway, so back in the day, you know, you had a record label. They would have an artist and they would tip. Yes, it would be you would basically get paid nothing. The record label would own everything. They would give you an advance and they would recoup that money, that advancement money, once they did marketing, once they pretty much had everything from the tour. They had, I mean, back then it wasn't really a ton of merch as we have today, but pretty much everything that had to deal with that artist, the record label owned, and they were going to recoup all of the money that they had advanced you. Many artists tend to be bad business people because they don't understand it is the music business, and they get the music part right, not the business part. And so the idea should be that if you want to sign with this label, you understand what you're going to give up in hopes that you make so much money that you can get yourself out of that contract, renegotiate, and get yourself a better deal. That's kind of the idea. Today, artists have so many ways to make money for themselves. They really don't need labels anymore. So why would you even need an Umar Johnson to help you run your record business? But you do need to understand business to move this thing along. Now it's just like anything else. If you don't have the marketing support of a label, being an independent artist, it is harder, but you own your own material. You don't owe anybody anything, and it's all yours. and you get to live off the benefits. If you write a record, you get to live off of that. And so many times, y'all think Lauryn Hill, she never made another record ever again. And she still lives off of tours from one, pretty much from one album. And so today artists have a lot of control. They're able to have a lot of control over their own art. So you don't even need a record label, and you certainly don't need anybody like an Umar Johnson. And it's just crazy to me that you think that you could come in, like, artists are we're very passionate about projects that we put out. It's like our babies. You put a lot of work and effort into them, and to pass it on to somebody else who could possibly just screw you over, just like, a record label. I mean, Umar Johnson is just full of garbage. Clearly, by that tablecloth that he wore, and that haircut is just ugly to me. Sorry.
So is he so panel, is he taking advantage of Black people's ignorance? What do y'all say?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Not just their ignorance, but their envy. Again, this is just more Marxist sloganeering. He sits around and tries to come up with some new diatribe that he thinks is going to, impress a lot of, again, gullible, uninformed, low character folk, sitting there in the Breakfast Club studio with the LGBT pride flag behind him. It's gross and disgusting. Somebody put in the comment section, and Blanche agreed with what the person said. I just happened to glance over and read it, talking about Robert Johnson and Chuck Berry. Of course, we hear about the entire musical enterprise in the United States is a Black thing, right? And you even have famous white rock bands such as the Rolling Stones and the Beatles and what have you. They lend credit to their their influence or their love of rhythm and blues and rock and roll. They give credit and respect for men like Chuck Berry and Muddy Waters and what have you. And it was depicted fairly well in the movie Cadillac Records. If to those of you who have seen that record, that movie. And so again, I mean, what are you gearing up towards? Are you gearing up towards a complete and utter takeover of all things that you consider of value? Because of course, Black folks are responsible for everything. Again, my boy Blanche, I've been really just LeBlanche is becoming like must watch for me every day. And Blanche was saying that he is getting so sick and tired of Black folks with this pride, taking credit for everything that. Whether we're talking about things of an intellectual sort, math and geometry, astronomy and architecture, building engineering and what have you, to things culturally such as music, art, fashion. I mean, there are all sorts of people all over the world. China contributed a lot. So you have all sorts of contributions from folk all over the world. But the way that these propagandists feed the Black, the ego, right, and this thing that we call Blackness, it's easy to lead Black folks astray, because they're, of course, feeding on their vice, right, or exploiting their vice, which is pride. Black folks are responsible for everything, thus we own everything. Of course, me, I like to give I like to give an historical example. I look at what the infamous Idi Amin, the one-time dictator of Uganda, did once upon a time when he expelled the East Indians from Uganda. Again, Chad, you sent me a screenshot earlier with somebody that made a comment under one of your posts saying something about the LGBT in Africa. Mm-hmm. and Marxism, and you said that there is a ton of information in terms of Marxism and its role in shaping post-colonial Africa. And of course, one of the things that Idi Amin did was he expelled the East Indians. Mm-hmm. And there was this whole notion of, again, Africa for the Africans. This wasn't just in Uganda, it was in Ghana, it was in other places where it was like, well, we need to expel the colonial rulers. And the Indians were kind of put in place as the kind of quote unquote managerial class during colonial occupation. But what they sent the Idi Amin sent out this edict telling the Indians that they had 2 or 3 months or so to relocate, or else their properties and all their holdings or whatever would be seized. And so many of them fled, fearing not just the confiscation of their property, but they feared execution. Well, what ended up happening when the East Indians fled due to Idi Amin dictates, the country economically went into the toilet, because the country could not survive without the East Indians, who had the human capital and the brain and the know-how, because they were the collective so-called brain trust that kept the country afloat. And so again, what are Black folk equipped to do? Right? Because if you dispossess, if you take from one and say, well, don't get, and again, Keisha just laid out the whole ins and outs of the music industry way over my head. I know nothing about it. But what I do know, what I do understand, is that if you take something and give it to someone else who does not have the human capital or the intellectual capital to ignite the thing itself, and it becomes useless, and the society begins to fall apart. You turn the music industry over to the so-called artists and watch the music industry fall apart.
Right.
That I do understand.
You have any thoughts on this, Craig?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, they already call me Uncle Tom and Sambo, so I might as well maintain the title. If we're going to be talking about our music, which they're talking about Black folks that make music here in America, we got to remember there was a time where white folks was actually trying to save us. And I know y'all probably like, Craig, what are you talking about? They protested, and they were trying to save Black folks by not allowing this type of degenerate, destructive culture style of music. Talking about rap, hip hop, drill, aka what I'm coined for saying, suicidal poetry on a good beat. White folks tried to save us. They were protesting it. And we won from freedom of speech, respectfully, which I understand. But as you see time going by, our music has changed and evolved into the destructive culture music that we hear today. I wouldn't even call it music. It's suicidal poetry on a good beat. No one denies that the beats aren't good, and you can't shake your tail to it and dance and have a good old time to it. It's the lyrics and the things that they talk about that is degenerate and is destructive. And it's plaguing every society that it goes to. It doesn't matter the demographics. It doesn't matter the economic, social status. It don't matter what your it don't matter if you made it in the NBA, you can turn out and you playing with guns, and somehow you just feel culturally connected to this degenerate music. So this music that he's so protective over, in the sense of he's saying we want to control this music, it puts it on a pedestal as if it's something good. It's not good. It's just destructive on all levels. The music today is not what it was in the 50s or the 40s or so on and so forth. It was music that had soul, and it was music about love. And even when it did have somewhat of a shift, it still had some form of what we would say is consciousness, right? Songs like Get Up, Get Out, and Do Something. But now we have things that glorify all the degeneracies of our society. And what's sad is a lot of these artists or rappers, some of them come out and say, look, it's an act. It's a mascot. It's not who I really am. It's just something that I constantly rap about because that's what sells. Mm-hmm. So when I hear people like Umar, because to me, he ain't no doctor. When I see Umar, when he gets to spouting off at the mouth about we want to control our music and yada, yada, yada. Well, white folks, Jewish folks, whoever that may be, that he's saying that he wants to disconnect from and only Black folks can control, I guess he skipped over the part to where when he says they want control of the marketing, well, what are you going to market to? What radio stations do you really have? What forms of communication do you really have to where you can get it out to the masses, like the people that you are claiming don't need to have any form of control over the music, right? Yeah. Another thing, that's business. Mm-hmm. The artist negotiated that deal and signed on the dotted line those contracts. So, I get it. There's some bad contracts out there there's some terrible deals that were made. People got burned. But at the end of the day, it's up to you, right? Your ignorance. What is the saying they say when it comes to law? Ignorance to law. How does it go? If anybody can just
Ignorance
spout
of
it
the
out.
law is no excuse.
Right. It's the same thing with business. There's no excuse for your ignorance when it comes to your business. It's up to you to read, negotiate, make sure the terms and the conditions of the contract suit you, or it's a win-win. I've learned that in business, right? So I can't say, oh well, his frustration should be geared towards, he says he's conscious and he's all about self-improvement. Well, instead of speaking the language of, somehow people are victims, let's speak the language of educating ourselves, learning the business, learning how to negotiate, learning how to delegate and hire the people to be able to recognize things in contracts or help you negotiate contracts that are going to put you in a better place or position for yourself, your career, and the work that you work hard for. But again, it goes back to you can own and do the marketing, but what platforms, right? We anytime we do have a sensible platform, we those same black folks that today that tell us how we're supposed to vote and vote or die, and they promote stop snitching campaign, just different things like BET, they end up selling it to the very same people that they claim they have so much anger, hatred, and resentment towards. BET sold it out. They sold out the channel that they built, the network that they built. And if we go back in time, BET actually had some educational programs at one point, college tours, teen
Mm-hmm.
summit. They talked about certain things when it came to teens and so on and so forth, but they'll sell it out. So it's like, these people, they chase their tail, like you can't keep up with them. You'll continue to do mental backflips. Listen to people like Umar. And
And I
I'm
think
gonna just keep it short. I'm not gonna get long winded.
go ahead. Oh, okay. No. I think we established that his name isn't actually Umar. It's Jeremiah or something like that. Jeremiah Shoemaker or something like that. But
Yeah,
neither here
Shoemaker.
Can I just say
Right.
one more thing about the music industry and about music? I think we need to remember spiritually, as a person who has all I've loved music and I've been able to sing. The first time I sang, I think in church, I think I was like 3 years old or something like that. I still remember that day, and I have always had a deep connection with music and just the sounds and the harmony, all of that stuff. Music is very powerful. When you write a song, when you're writing the chorus, it's called a hook. And the goal is to get it into your mind so that even when you are not, here's the difference, because people are like, well, people see violent movies. What's wrong with violent music? Here's the difference. Music is built for your subconscious to be playing it when you don't even realize. Have you ever been just like, I don't know, for me, washing the dishes or just doing whatever, and you're singing a song, you could be singing it and you don't even realize that you're singing a song that sometimes you're like, why am I singing this? Why is this song stuck in my head? I don't even like the song, but it's catchy and it gets into your spirit. God tells us to guard our minds. We're supposed to guard our hearts, guide our portals, so to speak, so you don't get influenced by these things. And last point, the devil, Lucifer himself, was literally in charge of music. And I truly believe that the enemy has found a group of people who are good at making sinning sound and look cool. And it has been utterly destructive, not just to Black people, because hip hop has transcended the entire world, and
Mm-hmm.
it is it's very destructive, especially when the beat is good but the lyrics are trash, and that stuff gets into your system. If you cannot tell me that I there are times like if I'm listening like to hip hop my spirit changes. I don't know, none of my homeboys from back on the block, none of them was going to do what they was doing, listening to Precious Lord. They weren't. Okay, they were listening to music that was hyping them up for the moment. You know, and these things are, it's just destructive. I just wanted to bring the spiritual aspect to that as well. There is a highly spiritual, there's a spiritual connection to, you know, many things, if not everything, but especially to music, because Lucifer, the devil, was literally over that, and so it's important to remember.
Right. So we moved on too quickly. I meant to play this video earlier. I'm not going to play the whole thing. I'm just going to play the first couple seconds of it, pertaining to the first topic that we were talking about before I get back to Jeremiah Shoemaker. But this kind of goes along with what we were talking about earlier with regard to black conservatives. Okay, so I'm open to being attacked for the things I say, but
Chad Jackson, he's a fellow black conservative. He said something that is just pretty asinine. It shocked me as a black conservative because it's one of the dumbest things that I've ever heard. Why should you care about whether or not someone is racist? If no one's told you this, you're black, buddy. And there's people out there who don't like you strictly because you're black. When you speak like that, that is why people call us coons. That's why people call us Uncle Times. That's why people call us sellouts. Because you think like you don't have to care about racism, like it doesn't impact you. It impacts you when you go in and out of places and people are saying and doing things when you're not there.
Now, not only did you miss the mark, I know what I said, so there's no need to say it again.
Who is this guy?
You're like a bro Kobe Bryant. Who is this?
Who is this, man? Goodness gracious, dude. We get attacked by everybody.
Who is this?
But have y'all ever been...
Y'all talking about Chad ain't black enough. Sometimes I'll be listening to Chad. I'm saying, man, maybe I ain't black enough, man. I don't know where these people be coming from, man. You know what I'm saying? Where do these people come from, man? What's their beef? I don't understand.
But the attacks come from all sides, you know? And what I've noticed, though, and I'm only speaking for myself, you guys can speak to your own experiences, is that for me, if you follow me on social media, you'll notice that my faith is front and center on everything that I do, everything that I talk about. It informs how I feel about the education system, how I feel about literally everything. And so politics is merely secondary, or not even secondary. It's way downstream of what I even talk about. It just so happens that, you know, that there is a political nature to some of the cultural things that are going on. And I talk about culture and stuff from a biblical perspective. And it's what I find is that because that is my MO, the attacks come from the left as well as people who are quote unquote Republicans. And it's typically the people who are diehard Republicanites or politicos who have an issue with me. And if I can put my finger on what it is, it's that for them, politics really is this kind of end all be all. You know, politics is the answer to the difficult equation. You know what I mean? If we can just get the right people in office, if we can just, you know, get enough black people voting Republican, then all this stuff will be fixed. And in order to do that, the Republican Party does need to, you know, put together a platinum plan for black people, or put together this kind of thing that will cater to black people. If only that will happen, then black people will get it. And it's, for me, it's like, no, the Bible says my people suffer for lack of knowledge. You know what I mean? The Bible says that if my people will turn from their wicked ways, then will I listen to them. It's not about Republican versus Democrat. It's about right versus wrong. It's about being an upright man of integrity and dignity. That's what it's about. It's about being a woman of virtue, a homemaker. The law and the order that God has put into place and abiding by that. We think that we can do it the world's way and put a R on it and it's good. But that's not the way that it works. And so for me, the fact that I'm getting attacked from all sides, so to speak, it kind of makes me think that I'm doing something right. But anyway, any of y'all can respond to that. I'll just leave it open.
No, it's
Well,
oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Craig.
No, that's why I always whenever I have the opportunity, I always let people know that I'm a slave to my values. I'm a slave to my principles. I call no party my master. When I say, hey, I vote Republican, when I publicly let people know I ain't voting Democrat, I vote Republican, it's only because they tend to lean more towards those values and principles that I'm referring to. It's in no way is this saying that the Republican Party is the end all be all. They represent every single thing of my values and principles. When we know, I think everybody on this panel knows that is not the case. So I always like to really hit home and make sure people understand when I say that I am a slave. I love using the word slave, or my master is my values and principles. I call no party my master. I'm a slave to my principles and values. I call no party my master. So I love to hit that home so people can fully understand that, hey, for me, it's more about my values and principles as not only just a man, but a man of God. And I'm trying to live in a certain way of living upright and according to God's way, right? But again, it's just like Chad just said, a lot of my takes are going to come off very political. And a lot of my content is political. And a lot of it is trying to destroy the constructs of this new cultural phenomenon that's going on, which is a cultural war. And I have to continue to keep pushing back on that because it's wrong, it's evil, it's demonic in many different ways. So,
yeah, very well said. Very well said. Go ahead, Chet or Blanche.
Well, I'll go. Go ahead, Blanche.
Oh, accept.
I just want to say first and foremost that that's not true. What that gentleman just said about you, Chad, about how you dismiss racism and this, that. That's not true. It's patently false. It's libelous. It's slander. Call it what you want. The problem is, and what this gentleman takes issue with, I'm sure, is your prescription, is the antidote, is the antidote, the solution that you provide. And and therein lies the problem with the left. Oftentimes, is that it's not that conservatives, whether they be black, white, polka dot stripe, or argyle pattern, it's not that they're not willing to address the issue of racism. It's to the extent that they subscribe to the same solution, right? That to them determines whether or not that you are seriously dealing with the problem. It's whether or not you're willing to say the same things that they are willing. Because again, Chad, you talk, I mean, we always fall back and go back to Booker T. Washington, right? Was Booker T. Washington dealing with race? Was Booker T. Washington dealing with racism? Or was W.E.B. Du Bois and the NAACP dealing with the issue of racism? Was Booker T. Washington a sellout, a coon, an Uncle Tom, and this, that, and the third? Right? I don't think so. I think that, of course, I mean, Booker T. Washington, this man was born a slave. He had an approach to life and how he felt that blacks could improve in the society. So it's not about whether you just dismiss racism or you act like racism isn't a problem, right? It's about, well, what do I do as an individual? Not we, but what should I do as an individual to, go beyond this so-called barrier? Because I guarantee you, the more and more you lean into whatever it is that this man is suggesting that we as people of color, because he didn't even look like he was black, he looked Indian or something, I don't know, but the more we lean into what he's talking about, I guarantee you that the barrier of racism is going to become more pronounced and more prominent the more and more we begin to see the world the way this so-called conservative sees it. So that's a lie. That's a lie. It's not that you don't care about race, you don't care about racism. You just don't want to approach the issue of racism the same way they do. You don't subscribe to this notion of trying to amass political power in order to force people against their will to do something that violates your conscience.
Right.
That's what we're talking about.
Exactly.
I can't stand it when they say I don't want to recognize racism. It's not true at all. I think all of us on this panel know racism exists. There's just people that have biases and they just can be quote unquote racist. where I think the dilemma is with them is because we don't look in the lens of everything as black and white, and it drives them up the wall that we don't
That's right,
subscribe to
Chris.
that ideology, that way of that mentality. So that is true with Chad. It's true with me, and I'm sure I can say, speak on y'all's behalf. I know racism is out there. Am I saying that it somehow affects my day on a day-to-day basis and keeps me from being able to do something? No, it doesn't. I'm sorry. Because I'm black and you have an anger, hatred, and resentment towards other peoples of other shades of color, I'm not going to box myself into, if I'm out seeking love and affection or a certain type of relationship. God may put a white woman in front of me. God may put a Spanish woman in front. I don't care who he can put in front of me. I'm not looking for skin tone. I'm looking for certain attributes and qualities, values that they bring, which is exactly what we're talking about now. We don't subscribe to boxing ourselves into just we're black and black, 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 black. We are going beyond that, and the values and the principles is how we are living our lives, how we're moving out. So when these people come along hating and showing their animosity towards, they're upset because we are not subscribed to that mentality and that ideology of ignorance, that mentality that we don't want. We just don't operate that way. And I think that Booker T. Washington was the same way. Here's a man that actually came from slavery, has every right to have an anger, hatred, and resentment towards people at that time, but he had a higher level, a higher emotional intelligence of being able to understand that, hey, I'm not going to focus on discrimination, on how other people think of me, or how they treat. We're going to focus on ourselves by educating ourselves, working hard through merit, investing in ourselves, creating higher learning institutes, investing in each other's business. And through that, we will show our counterparts what we are able to do on our own, and us just living our own way. And in return, they will respect you. And they did, which is why he was an advisor to the president, and so on and so forth. So I think that when those people come around, they just don't like the fact that we don't subscribe and seeing everything through a lens of white and black, and there must be racism there. I didn't get the job because I'm black, or man, they cut me off on the road because I'm black. It's because I'm black. We just don't subscribe to that. We may have a higher emotional intelligence to be able to internalize certain things and say, you know what could I have done differently? Or what can I have done better for myself, right? I'm not going to project to outer influences of why something may have not come into fruition or happen, or this happened to me because of this. I just feel that or at least me, I just don't operate my life that way. And I think that that's part of leadership as well.
Right.
It's like another form of just taking full responsibility. Now, is that to go to say that there isn't cases of where something is just blatantly, they profess it out to you, yo, black, blah, 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 blah. That's a different case. But overall, what I'm seeing consistently is, well, I didn't get the job because I'm black. And the first thing I have to ask them is, what evidence or basis, what do you have to that got you to come to that realization or a conclusion that it was because you're black, right? So, I don't want to get long with. I love to leave I just love, if I go on that rant, I'm feeling it. I got to say what I got to say, man.
Go ahead, Blanche.
I mean, I would say this. Now, I don't subscribe to racism at all. And I'm going to tell you why. If you had to create a test, you had to actually test black people on what was racism, most black folks would fail. Because what black folks call racism isn't racism. What black people complain about isn't racism. So if what they're complaining about isn't racism, then that means they're not complaining about what could be racism, which means they don't really care about it. So I asked somebody in the chat, I said, if black folks had to choose between Ben Carson or George Floyd, who would they pick? Now you got to think. Joe Biden said, if you don't vote for me, you ain't black. And 58% of black people, a record number, voted for Joe Biden. So I don't subscribe to racism because anytime you see quote unquote actual racism, there's always compensation. It's always rectified. Anytime you actually see racism, they cut a check. Anytime it can be proven, they cut a check. So America has a great track record of rectifying racism. All this other stuff, to me, isn't racism. So once you even say, okay, we know America's racist, you already hop into a narrative of no context, no facts, no truth, just all emotional, people going crazy. I had the high interest rate. What was your credit score? It was a 6. Okay, you got to go through all of this crazy stuff because of emotional unintelligence. But when it comes to actual racism, if y'all look at anything that they say is racism, and it's actual, something like with Wells Fargo, I bring it up all the time. Wells Fargo, they said they were denying black people the loans, the home refinance loans and the loans to get a home, I guess. Did you ever hear anything else about that? Did you see a protest? Did they ever bring it up again? All you saw was Regina King doing Wells Fargo's commercials. So to me, something that they claimed was supposed to be racism and they could prove it, black folks didn't care about it. We got to be honest. And we just got to be honest about where black people are today. Black folks don't care about racism. Black folks care about feeling good. Black folks care about looking good. Black folks do not care about racism at all, period. So we got to be honest. And talking about racism does more harm than good because when we talk about racism, what is the solution? What is it? Are we going to take Umar Johnson's route? Are we going to take the Marxist route? Like, what's the solution to racism? What is it? What are we going to do? Are we going to put black folks in charge? I remember when that New Edition movie came out, and the most craziest part of that movie was, just piggyback on the music industry we talked about earlier, New Edition got done wrong in their first contract, right? They got done horribly, right? Even though they signed, they still got done horribly. What did Michael Bivins do to the groups that he signed? The exact same thing. So even when you had a black person controlling black folks' future in the music industry, they still did the same thing that the quote unquote racist Jewish people did. Again, I don't subscribe to it because I know that most of this stuff is just really human nature and poor character. It's not really about racism. It's just about bad people doing bad things. And so I don't really subscribe to it because, I mean, once I subscribe to racism, I got to go down this rabbit hole of foolishness, and then I'm back. I'm sitting in the room with Umar Johnson and Don Lemon and Cardi B and Kamala Harris, and they all grilling me. I'm tied to a chair, and they quizzing me and asking me all too much.
So Blanche, what you're saying is what Colin Kaepernick was saying about his adoptive white parents, saying what you got them cornrows in your hair for, looking like a thug. And I correlate that same type of behavior from the adoptive white parents to my mama that's black that told me the same exact thing. That's not racism at all, which I agree. So that just using that as an example of these folks that we are talking about, I would say that is an example of exactly what you just described.
And you got to think about it too, Craig. Just ask yourself, what are black people actually complaining about? If you really listen to what they're complaining about, what black folks are complaining about is white people get to do this and we can't. You never hear black people say, we can't be doctors, we can't be lawyers, we can't be scientists, we can't be astronauts. You never hear black folks say we can't be CEO. In fact, black folks say they bosses and kings. So again, if black folks aren't being hindered from being doctors and lawyers and CEOs and scientists, then what are they being hindered from? Exactly. Their complaint is white people get to do something that we can't. That's not racism. That's called you wanting to be decadent. That's called you wanting to be foolish. That's not racism. That's called you envying another group for having a quote unquote, I guess, privilege. But you black folks don't complain about being denied the right to be the CEO of their own company. None of that. Or be a professional athlete, or be a painter, or be an artist. Black folks never complain about that. Black folks complain about white people get to do wrong and get away with it.
Yeah.
Or on the reverse side of what you just said, white folks get to do this and we black folks don't get to do this. Or on the reverse of that, like the N word, black folks can use this, but white folks, you're not allowed to use this. I would say this in the reverse, it's the same thing. So, boy, that boy Blanche be speaking the truth, boy.
Yeah.
I think like what he was responding to, the video that you saw, and I'll give it to Keisha because I know she got to go. But what he was responding to is I made the comment and said, like, racism doesn't matter to me. I don't get caught up in the question as to whether it exists or not. I've never been discriminated against in any way to my knowledge. And to the extent that somebody may have called me the quote unquote N-word behind my back, so it doesn't make me doesn't make me a damn bit of difference as to who is saying what behind my back. I still sleep fine at night. And when it comes to, you know, this thing that both black liberals and a lot of black Republicans use as an example of racism, when they say that black people with quote unquote black names have a harder time getting a job than Jake and Chad and John and Paul. LaQuisha can't get a job as quickly as, you know, Ryan, for example. My response to that was, well, rather than LaQuisha being upset that she didn't get a job, why don't LaQuisha start her own business and then hire Tyrone and Shaniqua and, you know, all the other people who have a hard time finding a name or a job because of their name? Why is it that we are so caught up in what the so-called white power structure is or is not doing for us, rather than utilizing the tools and the resources that is available for everybody, regardless of race, regardless of ethnicity, utilizing those tools to create our own jobs, to do our own thing? Why let something hinder you from being successful in a place like America? Racism is a problem because you choose for it to be a problem. I own a plumbing company here in Texas. Admittedly, if somebody applied for my company and his name was something crazy, I'd probably think twice about voting or allowing him to come work for my company. And the reason for that is because this may sound silly, but if you were named this weird name, that gives me some kind of idea as to who your parents were and what your upbringing was, right? Mm-hmm. Now that, you know, there's obviously exceptions to the rule. However, what I've found by and large is that the people that I've come across with a crazy sounding name have a certain ideology that is part and parcel of this kind of culture that their parents lived under, that gave them the confidence to name their child this crazy name, namely this kind of rebellious kind of attitude and culture. Again, that's not a blanket kind of thing. However, from what I've seen, it has been pretty common. But I'll give you the last word, Keisha, on this particular subject before we move on.
So
hold on, Keisha. Hold on one second, Keisha. You got spared because your name is spelled Keisha with a Q. Had it been spelled with a K, Keisha, you'd have been in trouble. Go ahead.
You know what? I tease about my mom all the time about that. But one thing is, it has never held me back. It's never held me back. Literally, if I have put my mind to do something, I've done it. So, and they call me Quishas a lot of times. So, you know, but it's all good. So God is good. It's all good. First of all, when Chad shared that clip with us, I was pissed. Chad was like laughing, but I don't know. I was offended because first of all, it's just not true. You know, it's like having the opportunity to get to know Chad a bit more through these conversations. Just like that, it's offensive because you haven't really taken the time to see what he's about, or you really just are working out of like you want to be just, there's no real reason, you just want to hate on him, you just want to. And I curve people like that, because it's like you are so you just want to be stuck in whatever you think, that you refuse to just, you are just a hater, you just a hater, and just like curve them. But I will say this, so about the when it comes to like racism and stuff like that, I don't see racism as, it's just like any other sin, it's just like, okay, if somebody's a liar, you're like, why do we have to put racism on like this pedestal of like, oh my
Right.
God, if somebody was racist, like, honestly, I would rather a stranger be racist who's not going to affect my life than somebody that I know lying to my face. I mean, they're both sins, but the person who's lying to me is, I'm dealing with you directly, like, I know you, you're, whatever. It's a sin, just like any other thing. That's what racism is. I don't understand why racism gets like this special class. It's like, if you're racist, that's the worst sin ever. It's not. It's just not that deep. The other thing I wanted to say, we were talking about the music stuff again, and I think it was Blanche, I think, who said it when in the new who was the one
New
with
edition. Michael
New
Davis.
Edition, when
Michael Davis.
what's his name went to go form his own company, he was doing the same things they all do. Matter of fact, Puff he was one of the worst. In fact, now this is, some people know this, you probably heard, Puff used to have men do some strange things for change, let's just say, um, in his office, wherever, but he would have them do that to to bring them in to basically get their loyalty. So you talk about doing people dirty, like, but I mean, the guy, whoever, all those guys that was doing it, they was doing it, so it takes two to tango, let's just say that. But I mean, but that's grimy. That is grimy. You want this That's how they do women. Women are done like that in the music industry. If you want this deal, you got to, do whatever. So yeah, it can be much worse when the power. That's why dictatorship is so bad, because everybody always thinks, oh, when I'm the one in control, I'm going to do it so much better than the other person. And a lot of times, you might be the worst one, because now your sick mind is having people do all kind of stuff, so it's sin in itself. It's like, that is why you need a heart transformation, you need life transformation, a renewing of your mind, because the heart is desperately wicked. It is desperately wicked. Who can know it? It's what the Bible says. And so when it comes to all of these things of race and how we look at each other, and what we will do to one another, we got to deal with that. We have to become a society where we can deal with the core things beyond the race thing. It's sad to me that at one point in time, America did have people who were in power that were racist. Now the people that weren't black people are doing the same thing, and they're using the very same thing, skin color, to put themselves above other people. And it's like, now they're like the little dictators trying to control and do the same exact thing. It's just like, it is the problem from the very beginning, still the same problem from the garden. And it's that's why you can't let your whole ideology be about politics, because this is so much bigger than that. This is so much bigger than that. And if we can't begin to see that this race thing, this skin color thing, y'all, when I tell you, when God took that idol down, when he brought that down, the freedom that came over me, it was literal bondage. It was bondage. Me thinking that I had to see everything through the lens of being Black. That, and calling myself a Christian, the way God spoke to me about it was very firm, that it was offensive to him. That you walk around here calling yourself a Christian, you're wearing my name, but you're leading your life through this lens of being Black. And that's not all right. You know, I don't want to be walking around in the wilderness for 40 years, you know, trying to get to the promised land. Have y'all ever actually looked to where, like, how far the promised land was? It wasn't even that far. Like, it wasn't even a long journey. And they never got to see it. Like, some of them never even got to see it. So anyway, the bondage that race, skin color, these superficial, race is so, it's levels of melanin. Like, when you think about what we are actually talking about, it is ridiculous. It's ridiculous because everybody has melanin, unless you're an albino. Everybody. And we are putting so much stock into something that means nothing. It is going in the dirt. Okay. Like, you're not going to stand before the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords with your high level melanin count. Okay. You're not. Yeah. And we are putting so much stock in something that means absolutely nothing. It's just such a superficial way to live. And it creates all of these other problems that when you can just look reality in the eye and say, you know, this really doesn't mean anything. You know, it doesn't tell you, me being Black, you know, it doesn't tell you anything about me. It tells you absolutely nothing about me. You don't know. I could be a great person. I could be a terrible person. You have no idea. But yeah, I just wanted to give those last few points before I jump off here. But it has been great.
Before we move to the next thing, Chad, I got to add something to what you and Keisha said.
Okay.
When you said Shaquisha can just go out and start her own business and hire Daquan and all these different names, you know what I'm saying? It reminded me of something that I did. When I came home from prison, I took on a mindset that it is better to create a job than to go find one.
Yeah.
If I would have subscribed to, oh, I'm Black, I got felonies, just came home from prison, they say it's so hard for me to get a job. I had a mindset that I'm going to try to get jobs, but if for some reason it's not working out in a timely manner, I'm going to create a job. So I've always had that mindset that it's better to create a job than to go find one. And that is the same philosophy and mindset that Booker T. Washington had. And I said this the other day on Brandon's show. I talked about the Uncle Tom film, how you were able to depict it, how Black folks were happy and successful, and they did it through that philosophy of hard work, merit, economic growth, investing in themselves and their businesses, so on and so forth, to where under people that came from under Booker T. Washington's tutelage, they went and bought one of the biggest buildings in Harlem. And that's what popped off and started Harlem, that there were successful Black real estate investors during a time where, and they can't stand it when I say real racism, as if racism compared to today. When I say real racism, meaning like they were really faced with real racism, in your face, discrimination, things that were literally obstacles. But yet this mindset and this philosophy and these values and principles that they had before the coming of the Marxism through W.E.B. Du Bois, but that's another story. I'm sure you and Chuck will hit up on that. They became very successful. And a lot of people don't know that Booker T. Washington's wealth today would be worth $5 million. And there's a lot of people in today's world that will never see $5 million. So that's something to think about. And Booker T. Washington was not the only one. So it just goes to show you culturally something shift for the worse. principally and morally something shift for the worse, which is only makes you have to go back and reevaluate how we lived back in a time when we were faced with real opposition. And it's simple. We had God as the center of our homes, was the foundation of our homes. I say it all the time. A lot of the stuff that's taking place in our society today would not be taking place if we had fathers in the home and a father in heaven. But they've stripped that out. Something changed for the worse. Long story short, that mindset, those philosophies, those values, and the way that they lived, it worked even during times of true opposition, racism, whatever you want to refer to it as. But what we have now is that Marxist destructive culture of a W.E.B. Du Bois, someone that didn't even come from any type of struggle as if Booker T. Washington did, but yet they have so much anger, hatred, and resentment pent up, and they act out and move out in a certain way that is not productive at all. And I think that has overcame a lot of society today, and it's become mainstream popular to adopt that type of philosophy.
Very well said.
I
Can
just
I
want to
say
say
one
bye
thing
to
before?
everybody as I jump off. Thank you so much. I love you all. I will see you next time.
All right, take care, Keisha.
Bye, Keisha.
Thank you, Keish.
Peace
Bye.
out. Hey, Chad, can I say one thing,
Yeah,
man?
go ahead, man.
If you don't mind. If not, okay. Uh, Again, because it just the whole thing with the names and everything else. What the grievance industry has become an extortion racket, and that's precisely what it is. I mean, we could look at the statistical figures and talk about the as far as the employment figures are concerned, small businesses or small employers versus medium and large, and so on and so forth. I remember coming across something a few years ago. Studies show that particularly small businesses shy away from hiring minorities. Why? Because they fear legal retribution for having to discipline a minority employee, or let's just say, for example, having to fire them. The larger companies can afford to incur the financial uh, uh, um, you know downfalls or pitfalls for having to deal with not proven instances of racial discrimination, but the assumption or the allegation. This sort of weaponized legalism. A lot of small time employers they can't afford it, and so even if you have a Lucretia or a Tyrone, that he or she may be the most upstanding person that you could possibly hire, but what has hurt that person is the so-called leaders that claim to speak up on their behalf, because there's this entire legal and political apparatus waiting to wage war on their behalf in the instance that there is an allegation of some sort of racial, wrongdoing, and therein lies the problem. You have to stick to the game plan and trust the process. Dad, you talked about it in the past, the way blacks began to abandon incrementalism when they began to listen to their activists or the blacktivists that claim to represent the collective, right? Saul Alinsky, and I know you all are familiar with Saul Alinsky. Of course, there was a famous riot in 1968 in Chicago at the Democrat National Convention that was organized by Tom Hayden and Bobby Seale and others. And Saul Alinsky, who wrote the playbook for the New Left, going from that point moving forward, was appalled by what he had seen. And this is a quote of Saul Alinsky, that what the radicals should have been trying to do was not start a riot at the Democrat National Convention. They should have been trying to become their delegates. Don't riot, become their delegates. Take over the party. How I know he was appalled by all of this talk about up against the wall and what do we want? Revolution. When do we want it now? Saul Alinsky said, now how can you push for an armed insurrection against a government that has all the guns? Take the guns first, and then maybe you can talk about some kind of but not now. Why would you say that now? Right? And so I say all that to say that, Chad, something else that you've talked about in the past, you talked about the way, again, our federal government changed in the mid-60s, beginning with the 1964 passage of the Civil Rights Act, when all of these massive federal bureaucracies were created in order to curb perceived instances of discrimination. And everybody wonders, well, why has the administrative state grown so immensely? Why is it so out of control? Right? Where are my tax dollars going? Whose salary, whose living expenses am I funding, and so on and so forth? Well, when you start talking about racism and how conservatives and Uncle Toms and sellouts don't care about racism and this, that, and the third, that same individual who said that about you, Chad, will probably be the same person talking about the issue surrounding, or as it relates to, this massive federal leviathan. This is the same person. Mind you, a lot of these federal bureaucracies are in place thanks to, the efforts of a lot of these activists who claim that they were trying to root out discrimination. And now you have to report stats in terms of how many minorities have you hired, how many minorities have you given law, how many minorities have you and if there is any situation where there is symmetrical outcome distributions, then some federal bureaucrat has to step in order to remedy the problem or punish the folk for not being so-called equitable and what have you. And all that does is, of course, it ruins the society, right? Because it disincentivizes wealth creation, because it makes it harder to operate a business. And, it makes folks, right, lazy. They complain. They become, envious and jealous and so on and so forth. And so there you have it. So that's why Lakeisha don't get hired, because folks don't want to deal with her, because they know that they got a whole bunch of Benjamin Crumps and other folk waiting in the wings to pounce on them if, they have to tell them, hey, change your hair, or when you're walking through, pull your pants up, or, I've noticed that you've been 5 to 10 minutes late 4 times out of the past 5 days. Think you may want to,
And Chuck, they'll say that's racist.
Yeah, they'll say that's racism.
They'll say that's racist.
Exactly. And that's why, to my point in my long-winded way, that's why a lot of employers, to what Chad said, would shy away from hiring Lucretia, because there's this fear. There's this fear of the grievance and the activists, a mechanism in a society that's there to punish folk. Again, not for proven instances of racism, because you'd have to be able to read someone's mind, but just the allegation in and of itself. It costs employers money to fend off these allegations, and many folks just don't want to deal with it. So they don't want to deal with black folks.
100%. So I know Craig has to bounce off here in a moment, but I did want to play the first part of this recording that someone sent to me. I already shared it with Blanche and Chuck and Keisha, but I did want to get into this tonight, because now that we talked about the black conservative Republican side of it, I wanted to also talk about the black liberal side of it, in terms of, if you're doing what's right, you'll be attacked from all sides. If you want to listen more on commentary about what we just listened to with Jeremiah Shoemaker, otherwise known as Umar Johnson, do go over to Blanche's page. I think he commented on that video, or at least an edited version of it.
Hey, Chad, real quick, before you play that, because I don't think I meant to tie it all in with me bringing up Saul Alinsky, because I said earlier that Saul Alinsky, one of his most famous refrain or quotes or whatever, he said was, of course, the issue was never the issue. The issue is always the revolution. So when you hear folks talk about racial discrimination, this, that, and the third, and going again, Saul Alinsky urged the radicals to seize power. He was so morally relativistic and fluid that the ends always justified the means, right? So again, take over the society, play on this whole racial thing and what have you, and of course, the purpose of playing that up is this leftist revolution and takeover. But go ahead, Chad.
No,
That's why I brought Linsky.
and what you bring up is exactly on the money, because it speaks to what we were talking about earlier in this discussion this evening, namely that you have these black Republicans who are, in the same way as a larger Republican Party, the GOP, are blindsided by the strategic methodology of the left. And I say the word left just for lack of a better word, because the thing is, what the American Democrat Party has, what the left has, is people at work behind the scenes who are strategists, who do have an agenda for a global takeover. Like, that is their agenda, and they're using American politics to do so. They are working behind the scenes of both the Democrat Party and the Republican Party. They are more invested in the Democrat Party than they are the Republican Party. But if you look at your history and you see the fact that when it comes to first wave feminism, if not for Republicans, you would not have had a lot of the laws that came out of that quote unquote movement. If you look at the civil rights movement, if not for Republican votes in the House and the Senate, you would not have had the passing of that legislation. If not for a whole slew of legislation that came throughout the 20th century off the back of social justice movements from 1900 to 1999, you would not have had it without your Republican Party, who was there to sign the legislation or to pass the legislation based not upon having researched what it is they're passing, but rather based upon being blindsided by the more crafty, more sinister, more invested Democrat Party, who has at its reins these stratagems, these Frankfurt School type, Saul Alinsky type individuals who are pulling the strings. The whole objective, once again, is to get you to be emotionalized and to voting for something that will work to your detriment. And that's exactly what happened. And so when I look at these so-called black Republicans, they're really no different. Again, they haven't done their homework. They don't know what they're talking about. All they hear is buzzwords: racism, systemic racism, white supremacy, police brutality. And they feel that because the overwhelming majority of people believe these things, and there's no way that they can deconstruct the narratives, they ride with the narratives, they rock with the narratives, and try to push their own agenda based upon using the tools that have been given to them. And that's part of the problem. Did you have any response to that, Craig, before I played this clip?
No, man, you're unapologetically black. Go ahead, man. I know Blanche like, man. I'm messing, man.
What about you, Blanche?
Man, I'd have made Chad get up off the seat.
Man,
What about you, Blanche? Any response to that before I kept it moving?
I mean, you're 100% correct. I mean, it's, I always say, honestly, what is the negotiation strategy between conservatism and liberals? Honestly, if we really get down to it, what can we sit at the table and talk about? What these people are asking us to agree with is insanity. So, like, what can we? I just don't understand where there's a middle ground. There's not one. Like, if we believe in things like God, family, and I'm going to say this too, Chad. If you think about most of the folks that critique you and, like, take to social media to do it, I guarantee they all have one thing in common: they don't believe in God. Like, we are Mitch and that the fake Kobe Bryant. Those people, I guarantee, if you ask them what they believe in, it's going to be something crazy and foolish. Because I know that the stuff you talk about is really centered in God and the Word. So what are they really upset with? They're upset with you not subscribing to being a victim. And to me, that whole victim politics, somebody said the victim coin is worth more than Bitcoin.
Yeah, that's true.
But that victim mentality or victim coin is what that side uses. And I always say, I've seen a whole bunch of broke black Democrats. I have never seen a broke black Republican in my life. And to me, that speaks volume on the mindset of the person more than it does the party. It's just what the person that is the black Republican believes in versus what the average black Democrat believes in. The average black Democrat believes white people bad, I'm a victim, but I'm also a king and a queen, yada, 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 yada.
Exactly.
It's be like talking bad about Martin Luther King. You stay talking trash about Martin Luther King, and he come from the same group of people that sit up here and say, "Yo, we love him so much," but yet he sit up here calling them a Marxist. Man, get out of here.
You know he's not very articulate when he has to take challenging questions.
He like, when he gets all fidgety, his glasses, he starts looking at the camera all weird with his glasses on, and like he got a deer in the headlights. So we don't want to feel that way.
He be crooning so hard his glasses be fogging up.
Yeah, he's comfortable when he light up that cigar, and he's really grooving.
Normally Republicans can't walk and chew gum, but he actually be doing plumbing because he's a plumber. He actually should be plumbing and cooning at the same time.
Hold up, how you heard that he a plumber?
No, that's what he is.
He was
Hold up, you serious?
Yeah, he's a plumber.
Yes, he's a plumber. He's a plumber, but he's going around with a suit like he's an intellectual. Like he wrote a book on being an intellectual. The dude is a plumber.
I would have thought that he was the banker. Like the way he carries himself, the way like he wears suits and the glasses and all that, I would think that he's the daggone banker.
No, that dude freaking plumbing.
Plumbing and crooning.
So I don't understand what the premise of attacking someone because their particular trade is plumbing, as if plumbing is like some kind of bottom feed type of trade. Plumbing is everywhere. It's a very lucrative business. It's a trade. It's a must-need trade that's not going anywhere. I don't understand these people and their mindset, man. I don't get it. These people are some haters, man. Goodness gracious, dude.
So somebody from my somebody who follows me on IG, I guess they listen to these conversations that this group have, and they send them to me ever so often. And they sent me this clip, and there's more to it. But it's funny because, again, we were talking about Booker T. Washington earlier in the segment, and he talked about people like this. So too did Carter G. Woodson. So too did other people who identify this problem that the black intelligentsia have, the so-called talented 10th, where they seek to get clout by undermining natural leaders amongst black folks, people who are entrepreneurs, people who are pastors preaching not the social gospel, but the fundamental Christian gospel. These men were undermined as sellouts, bootlickers historically. W.E.B. Du Bois himself called Booker T. Washington and Uncle Tom. Mm-hmm. Again, this stuff is well documented. And so what was Booker T. Washington doing? He was teaching black men to cast down your bucket where you are. Don't beg white people for stuff. Don't cry about your position, your status, or what have you. Be a man, take advantage of opportunities, and make it happen. Be productive. These were the kind of things that Washington was talking about. These are the kind of things that Dr. J.H. Jackson was talking about. These are the things that I talk about, Chuck, Blanche. But to the extent that we are gaining popularity and audiences and followers, here along comes these individuals who have nothing going for themselves to call you bootlicker, sellout, the whole nine, and then to make fun of a profession that has taken care of me and my family quite well.
A reputable profession.
Right. And the thing is to be able, since when is it a bad thing to be able to use your brain as well as your hands? Like since when is that a bad thing? When you look at Jesus, he was a carpenter, yet he was the Son of God. He literally was able to use these 12 disciples to preach, to minister to, and then they, after Jesus ascended, were able to get the early church going, and then Christianity was able to spread like wildfire. And that was God in his infinite wisdom, using Jesus to do that, or becoming God in the flesh to do that. But two, you find that when you look at a lot of the ancient Greek philosophers, many of them had trades. When you look at, again, why do I even have to explain this? You know what I mean? To be able to use your hands and your head, that's a good thing. That's a mark of a real man. It's a mark of a Renaissance man, quite frankly.
Check this out, Chad. Just to add to what you just said, not only are they perpetuating what they constantly complain that they don't want done to them and black folks, they just re-perpetuated it. Not only are they making fun of the trade of being a plumber, it's not as if you were an employee as a plumber, which is nothing's wrong with that either, because they get paid very well. It's a reputable trade. It's a meaningful trade, unlike going to let me back up. They condemn it and they make fun to undermine the trade of plumbing, but you run and own the business of plumbing. That's one. And then I went back and I thought about it. They even perpetuated the stereotype of how you dressed because you have a blazer on. And here we go again. These people operate in ignorance. And it's exactly what we've been talking about this entire time. They're in bondage to this ignorance of idolizing skin color to the point where it takes over their ability to use the frontal lobe. They're like at a cognitive dissonance where their brain is at war with the facts and reality. And that's just the truth of the matter. They're haters. They have no intellectual stance, so they have to try to undermine through perpetuating the stereotypes that they claim that they hate people to doing to people. Here they are. They're trying to undermine a man's profession, which is a reputable profession. He owns his own business. He takes to the point where not only, I'm sure it's helped position you to be able to do other projects that I haven't seen any of these individuals come even close to being able to reach pinnacles of projects such as Uncle Tom 2, and so on and so forth. And then they go on to the way you dress. And it's like, well, what's wrong? You know what I mean? I could go on and on and on with these fools, man.
Amazing.
Hold on. I found out that one of the guys that was talking, he's a pastor. And I'm trying to get his church, but his name is Carlos. And he's I got him right here. So I'm gonna do some investigative work on
Mitch. Who was the other dude? He be in the car all the time when he talks.
Just goofy.
But Chad, what's funny is not one time did they say what you were saying wasn't true.
Fellas, I'm out, man.
All right, take care.
All right, P. Peace.
Man, I appreciate y'all, but we'll do it again, man. Just let me know when y'all want to do it again.
Okay.
All right, bro.
All right, thanks for coming on. What were you saying, Chuck? Or Blanche?
Yeah, Blanche was saying that he said one of them cats was a pastor. That's funny to me.
Yeah, his name is
I'm not shocked.
Pastor. Yeah,
I'm not shocked.
Carlos Jones.
Wow. I'm trying to figure out though, Chad, when he said that you're one of those types of people that will talk about how much you love him or love MLK.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, man. Chad, you said a lot of things. You've spoken. You're a public speaker. You videos, lectures, talks, videos, social media. So you said a lot of things, but I've never heard you once say that you particularly loved MLK. I don't know. Maybe you did at some point, but I don't know. But
I love Martin Luther King in the way that Christians are supposed to love everybody.
Supposed to love everybody. Okay, there you go. Yeah. So it's true in that regard. And then say, well, you say you love him, but then you'll turn around and call him a Marxist. And of course, everything is black, right, race this, race that with these guys. But I mean, so again, someone who's a worldview, I think I can safely assume they would agree with is a man that I've brought up before when I've been on your platform, Chad, and that is CLR James. CLR James, who had correspondence with MLK. They met in London. No, was it Paris? But again, my point was almost lost my train of thought there. CLR James said of MLK that MLK's politics were just as much on the left as anyone in his camp. And CLR James was a hardcore Marxist up until the day he died. He said that MLK's politics were distinctly Marxist-Leninist, and and CLR James is just as black as anybody on this panel in terms of his skin tone. And so you had other blacks who said the exact same things of MLK. And so again, this is not about race. This is about ideas. And of course, your ideas that they can't refute your ideas. And so they say, well, make fun of you. You're not qualified to speak on the things that you speak on because you're a plumber and you're playing the role of an intellectual because you have the audacity to wear a suit. It's completely and utterly, it's just trash, bro. It's just trash. Again, I wonder what they would say about some of the white men who were behind a lot of these figures, again, that they praise, since everything is so racial according to their worldview. I brought up Howard Zinn earlier. I think about another man in Howard Zinn. He was a mentor to Stokely Carmichael and the founders of SNCC. And also there was another white radical who went to Howard University, where I believe SNCC was founded at Howard University. He was a white man. He was a gay Marxist radical by the name of Tom Kahn. His full name is Thomas Davis Kahn. He helped Stokely Carmichael start SNCC again on a black campus. A white man. And so, and Tom Kahn and Michael Harrington, another communist, had very close dealings with Bayard Rustin, who, of course, we know was a mentor of MLK, but Bayard Rustin was also a mentor to Michael Harrington and Tom Kahn. So, I mean, again, it's just facts, ladies and gentlemen. I mean, it's just something that men like who were in that recording, don't want to deal with. They don't want to answer these questions because I guess it's too complex for their simplistic worldview. Just complete and utter stupidity, ignorance par excellence.
Right.
Since you like talking bad about Martin Luther King, goodness gracious, yo.
Where do they breed these men at, man? He's comfortable when he's up there with Coolheen and Blanchard. You are terrible representation to the black community. Are you a hardworking man? Yes.
Well,
but do you
know that, Johnny, why would you say
I'm gonna give him a benefit of the doubt. I'm gonna give him a benefit of the doubt.
This reminds me of like an episode of the Three Stooges.
We don't give black folks a benefit of the doubt.
Yeah, he don't give no black people the benefit. Yeah. He don't give Martin Luther. He didn't give Martin Luther King the benefit of the doubt.
That's a coon right there, Johnny. You cooning right there. That's what
I just gave him the benefit of the doubt.
But yeah, he don't give Martin Luther King.
I call him cooning just right there.
He don't give Martin Luther King the benefit of the doubt. He don't give Martin Luther King the benefit of the doubt, so we ain't got to give him the benefit of the doubt.
Martin Luther King lived to be 30.
Was that the pastor talking, Blanche?
See, that I don't know, because when he was talking, one of the girls said, that's Pastor Carlos. So whoever's voice it is in there is Pastor. It's probably the most animated one.
9 years old and was shot in his face and always preached nonviolence. And Chad says he was trying to, he never preached. He never did this. He never did that.
Yo, Chad would have got us killed. Chad would have got us all killed, yo.
No, he wouldn't have got us killed. No, he wouldn't have got us killed. We would have had to kill him. He wouldn't have got us killed. We would have told Chad, hey, look, go over there and look. As soon as he go over there and turn his back, we go ahead and pull that trigger. And get him on out of here. Get him out of here immediately.
We have to have two sets of plans. One for the coons and the real plan, right?
Yeah.
And we give them one plan, like we're going to leave on Harriet Tubman's coming on Wednesday, right? And we let them show up.
So these are grown men who are admitting that had they lived in the days of slavery, they would have put their trust in Harriet Tubman.
Exactly. Makes sense. Makes sense. Look,
you would have put your faith in a mythological creature rather than. All right, okay.
You know, Chad, man.
There was a narcoleptic.
Chad, I'm trying to figure out, Chad, what benefit of the doubt. What I'm having a hard. I don't understand the context. I mean, what do you mean? What does he mean? He doesn't give black people the benefit of the doubt. You didn't give Dr. Martin Luther King the benefit of the doubt. What exactly is meant by that in this particular context? That you didn't give MLK the benefit of the doubt. What does that mean? That you just assume that everything that that you learned in class, all the things that have been passed down to you vis-a-vis the culture about MLK, you just accept it. You don't question it. You don't think critically about it. Is that what he means by giving MLK the benefit of the doubt? Just assuming that? I don't get what that means. And then he said, and then one of them said something. Of course, want to tug on your heartstrings to say, well, he was a martyr for his cause. But there were a lot of men that became martyrs for their cause. I'm going down the list. I mean, Maximilian Robespierre was a martyr for his cause. I mean, and so was his other cohorts, Antoine Saint-Just and Danton, and all the men involved in the French Revolution were martyrs for their cause. I mean, what exactly are you talking about? Just because you were a martyr for your cause doesn't make your cause righteous in any way, shape, form, or fashion. What exactly does that mean? And Nicolae Ceausescu, right, was a martyr for his cause. What exactly are you talking about? And then he said, well, he got shot in the face and all he did was preach nonviolence. And Chad, you said at the last show that we were on, again, to speak to MLK's communism, his Marxism, nonviolence is a task, is a tool that communists use, because the protesters that were at the forefront of these marches and these sit-ins and what have you, they knew exactly what was going to happen. Right. They knew the crowd would be beaten and removed forcefully. They knew it, right? And they, did this so that it could not only radicalize the public, but radicalize the people who were participating in the protest, because, again, they thought that they could just go.
You forgot a key detail, though. They didn't pull permits to do these demonstrations. The thing is, in America, you have a First Amendment right to demonstrate all you want. But
they
for
did.
the sake of traffic, for the sake of noise, for the sake of everything that goes along with it, you need to pull the proper permits. They did not pull the proper permits because they wanted something to happen, and they wanted the cinema cameras to be there to pick up the footage, and they wanted to shoot that image out across the world to invoke a reaction. This was all planned.
Yep, I'm sorry, but I didn't mean to leave out that detail. But you're absolutely right, and they knew it, and they knew that by doing that, they could radicalize the people who participated in these protests, because of course they would feel some kind of way about being abused and whatever, and beaten, and physically removed and harangued, and they said, well, because we can kind of get them to sort of lose faith in this whole idea of, again, incremental change, and the more and more they get beat upon, the more and more we can radicalize them. So make the situation look as chaotic as possible, so that we could foment this overthrow, this taking over of the system. It was all by plan. It was all designed. But I guess me saying that is not giving MLK the benefit of the doubt. I'm sorry, I didn't give you. Okay.
But again, they're not saying that Chad is lying. So their issue, they didn't say one time that what you're saying is false, that you are misleading people. They didn't say any of that. They said, how dare you do it?
Right.
They just don't want Chad to say it.
Yeah. I would have got all y'all killed, apparently.
They wasn't going. Now, do you think hold on, time out. Let's be real, y'all, for a second. Do you think those guys would be the ones to risk their lives to leave a plantation? Do you honestly think those guys will have enough courage to plan an escape? Yeah, right.
They would have complained, but that's about it.
Come on, man. They would have been the ones telling.
Like, I don't see myself as being a slave just because of the way that my mind works, and I would have found a way to finesse my way out of being a slave. You know what I'm saying?
And they would have hated you. And they would have hated you for it, Chad. They said, look at him speaking the master, negotiating his freedom. Look at him. Look at him getting out of all this work. Look at him. I can't stand him. He ain't been in the field in 3 months. How's he doing it? I hate Chad, man. Let's get it, man. Let's get it. Let's jump it. Come on, man.
Yes.
It's funny because it's true.
On Wednesday, but actually, we're going to show up on Monday, get out of Dodge with Harry, and leave them behind.
But Mitch, you guys are joking. But really, we've always had to deal with them. I was sitting up just yesterday. I was sitting up with the kids, and we were watching some history stuff, and they were talking about the Birmingham protests, the bus boycott.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a lot of shadows that were black men that were going flapping the tires of the black people's cars. And
he sounds like a child, does he not? But just the other day, I was watching this thing on the history. Doesn't he sound like a little kid? Hold on.
On Wednesday, but actually, we're going to show up on Monday, get out of Dodge with Harry, and leave them behind.
But Mitch, you guys are joking. But really, we've always had to deal with them. I was sitting up just yesterday. I was sitting up with the kids, and we were watching some history stuff. And they were talking about the Birmingham protests, the bus boycott.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a lot of shadows that were black men that were going flapping the tires of the black people's cars, and they were harassing the black people that were boycotting. It wasn't only the white people. There was the coons that was doing that stuff on behalf of them. So we've always had to deal with them. So we do have to have two separate plans.
Yeah.
Okay, so plans for what exactly? Like, what are you planning for?
Yeah, what y'all gonna do?
Like, what are they genuinely? Like, what are they planning for? I have no idea. Because to say that you need a plan for something insinuates that that there's some kind of captivity that you're under that you need liberation from, and you need a plan to get out of it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Like, these are genuinely lost men.
Sad, man. That's sad, man. And I understand that this brother's a father too. At the same time, and it's like when you.
Well, Apostle, you know what he's married to, right, Apostle?
Oh, never mind.
Of course.
Possum. Let me ask you a question. Let's be real.
Awesome.
You know.
Whoa. Somebody's name is Possum? Oh, no. Come on. Hold on, time out. You mean to tell me the self-respecting black man's running around being called Possum? That's one level below coon. A possum is lower than a coon. You seen a possum? At least a raccoon is cute and do tricks. A possum is idiot. Man, it's called possum.
Oh, my sides hurt.
Oh my goodness. Call me possum. Goodness. My bad. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Chad, the way he fucking talks, all that bullshit he talks.
You have to have two separate plans.
Yeah, you're right.
That's sad, man. And I understand that this brother's a father too. At the same time, and it's like when you.
Well, Apostle, you know what he's married to, right, Apostle?
Never mind.
Of course, he didn't marry black.
Possum. Let me ask you a question. Let's just
Hey,
be real.
boss. Hey, boss.
You know Chad, the way he fucking talks, all that bullshit he talks. You know ain't no damn way a black woman gonna sit there and listen to her husband talk like that.
If it's a Shekinah, if he has a Shekinah,
Shekinah was raised by a pack of white people. So we understand. She was she was conformed. They changed her.
Okay.
Shekinah doesn't have a good relationship with black people. Her family. So yeah, we gotta understand these people are hurt.
She was adopted by a white family, so you know what that process is like.
Yeah. Okay.
So
okay.
She, not trying to be funny. They didn't even teach her how to really, that's why she doesn't. I'm not trying to be funny. That's why she doesn't do her hair like normal women do. She don't know how to do that. They didn't teach her that. They didn't teach her how to do certain things that our daughters see our mothers doing and see their mothers and okay, I'm gonna do this and that. So that's why she just walks around with her hair just like, hey, whatever.
Hold on, I'm trying to find a picture of Shekinah.
Who is that?
I think that's Bryson Gray's fiance.
She's an artist?
I think she's like a conservative commentator. But apparently Bryson Gray's fiance. I've seen her. Yeah, I know you're talking about. Yeah.
Again, man, it just goes to show you, man, there's no honor whatsoever. I mean, that's the last thing that I would do. I mean, no matter how much I disagree with someone, no matter how loathsome I think they are, women and children off the table, off limits. I would never speak about, any of Iron Mitch's wives. I don't care what I don't care. There's no place for that. Especially if they aren't involved, that they're not, on the scene and political and making statements and throwing their hat in the ring and saying, hey, I have something to say. It's just, why go there, man? Why go there, man? Again, no honor.
But they have no values.
No values, no manhood at all. None at all.
No, they have no values, and for them, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Blanche.
And he's talking about raised by white people, like raised by like a pack of white people, as if Mitch is the black version of a Chucky doll. He got freckles, red hair. Like this is listen. I've seen some of these guys, and the way they talking, man, just don't. I'm sorry. I can't let it ride, man. Nah, Chad.
He's a black version of a Chucky doll.
He's got freckles and red.
No, but the thing is, as far as what I don't get is for these people, and this kind of speaks to the double-mindedness of this kind of blacktivism that they worship, where they are double-minded and they are inconsistent and contradictory. Because on the one hand, you talk about white supremacy as though white people don't like you, they don't want you here, they wish you were gone, they wish you never existed. So left to you, that's how you feel about white people. And so it would venture to say that you wish that you would be accepted by white folks, and that you wish there was no quote unquote racism and no kind of white supremacy, and that you wish you can be on equal footing with white folks. So that's what you say, or that's the narrative that you put out there, the rhetoric that you put out there. But then on the other hand, to the extent that a black conservative is in either a friendship or a relationship or whatever the case may be with a white person, you have something negative to say about that. You know what I'm saying? But you won't say something negative about the fact that Don Lemon is married to a white man, or the fact that, Whoopi Goldberg has a thing for white men. I don't know what her, yeah. And so it's all these leftist heroes of yours, you wouldn't say anything about their significant other, But to the extent that a black conservative or a black Christian has a wife or husband or what have you that's not black, you think that that is somehow, I don't know. Like, the thing is, my values are not your values, right? For me, I'm not preaching that black is everything. I'm not teaching that blackness is next to godliness. I'm not teaching that. That's not what drives me. That's not the philosophy that I ascribe to. None of that. I happen to be a heavily melanated man who comes from a black family. That's just the context in which I find myself. When it comes to my worldview, I mentioned time and again throughout this live that everything that I believe is shaped by the Bible, is shaped by my Christian faith, is shaped by the Holy Spirit. That's everything that I believe. When it comes to a person, be they white, black, Hispanic, Asian, it doesn't matter. I see them in the same way that I see myself. A person in the flesh, prone to sin, in need of forgiveness, in need of the Savior. And so I don't see them as greater than me. I don't see them as lesser than me. I see them as another person. When it came to the person that I married, I wasn't out looking for a white woman to marry. I wasn't out looking for a specific race of a person to marry. I've dated black women. I've dated Asian women. I've dated Hispanic women. And I didn't have a specific preference for a specific color of woman. It just so happens that the woman that I married was the one that I saw myself with in terms of values, in terms of wanting to raise a family with, in terms of how we believed our children should be educated, so on and so forth. And so for me, I shouldn't have to explain anything to anybody in terms of why my wife is a certain color, because, I mean, who are you? You know what I mean? So anyway.
I guarantee Hey Blanche, didn't you say something one time? I don't know, one of them cats, it was either you or Cool Heen. They tried to like say, you know, maybe we should like link up and sit down and have a drink or something. Was it? I forgot who. Yeah, it's like, bro, come on, man. And if I saw you again, I'm not trying to sound tough. This ain't, you know, this ain't no type. This ain't that. I'm simply saying that I guarantee you, Blanche, you, me, Chad, anybody, if we were to run up on or bump into them cats in the street, they'd get the stuttering. Yeah, man. What I said was, see, man, I ain't really mean. I guarantee you, dude. I guarantee you, because they know, they recognize, they know what's up, bro. Like I'm not the type of person you could try to punk or play or run up on out here in the street. It's just not gonna happen like that, dog. So why don't you just, why don't you just pull it back a little bit, have a little bit more restraint, you know what I'm saying, and talk like you have some sense, right? Because you're dealing with men again. They admit you have children, you have a wife, and everything else. You have, you know, just as a man, right? A reputation. I mean, everything. And so, again, there are certain lines that even to the people that I disagree with that I just would not cross. And I can almost guarantee you, Blanche, let one of them cats bump into you in the street. It's gonna be like, oh man, Blanche, you know, I'll just messing with you, man. Hey, man, come on, man, come sit down, man. Let's break bread, man. Let's have a drink or so. What you drinking on, man? Let's go sit down. I guarantee you, dog, soft. Hang down, man. Come on, bro.
Yeah. Keep it real Sesame Street. Don't keep it street.
Yeah.
Keep it real Sesame Street.
Yeah.
No, but like for me, like what I don't get is, because I mean, I don't know. I don't see it. I don't see how this is a thing where like you go on people's like IG or YouTube or whatever with a hostile kind of posture. You know what I mean? It's that energy from the jump. Like, I don't get that. I see stuff on the internet all the time that I disagree with. I simply choose not to engage with it because I don't agree with it. And so for me, it's like these dudes have almost made it their living and kind of their MO to find and seek out people they disagree with and then attack them as coons and sellouts and all the rest. And it's like, do you get life from that? Like, do you get energy from that? Like, what is the benefit of this? You know what I mean? And of course, let them tell it. They'll say that they're trying to warn people against people like me, Blanche and Chuck, and how, you know, we are a detriment to the black community and how we're not being good examples to the black community. And it's like, okay, then who is? Who is? Genuinely, who is? Do you think Snoop is being a good example to the black community, the so-called black community, which I reject? But when you look at someone like Snoop, here's a man who's been married to one woman since the 90s. He's cheated on her, obviously, but he's been married to the same woman since the 90s. He is raising his kids, or raised his kids, and he pays his bills, apparently. And so everything that he's doing in his own personal life is at odds with the public image and the public persona that he's putting out there to the world. And so he's living a double life. And so what amazes me about black folks is how the person he is behind, like, behind the cameras, that's the image of him that they latch on to and say, yeah, he's a good father, he's a husband, he's a this, he's a that. And they completely look at that aspect of who he is to give a pass to the public persona that he's putting out there. And so, again, it's like, whenever you think in that kind of cognitive dissonance, I mean, you've already established that you're not even willing to have a conversation in good faith, because everything that I say that's reasonable, you're just going to reject it. It's like Blanche said in the last live and in this live. When it comes to black culture, anything that's decent, anything that's good is rejected. It's just rejected. That just is what it is. And so it does take an act of God to change that. It's kind of like what Keisha was talking about. God spoke to her, and thankfully she silenced all the noise enough to actually hear God's voice when he told her that your skin color has become an idol in your life. And that convicted her. I imagine that God is telling black people that on a daily basis, but there's just so much noise that they can't even hear it, and they choose not to hear it, and they choose to do what we are Mitch is doing, namely attacking people for speaking the truth.
Yeah, hey Chad, you said, man, it's going to take an act of God, and I couldn't help but think about. I'm not trying to open up a can of worms here, because there are probably all sorts of opinions regarding this man. But I think about Christopher Columbus, and again, I won't go into a whole thing about Christopher Columbus, but when I think about when you made the statement "act of God," one of the things that really drove Christopher Columbus was a kind of religious zeal. One of the primary reasons why he went about his voyage was he wanted to secure the Holy Land. And try and help, kind of maybe build a sort of coalition between Europe and Asia to drive out the Moorish influence and other things. And of course, by that time, the Muslims had control over the Holy Land. So part of Christopher Columbus's deal was he wanted to sort of build almost, I don't necessarily want to say a sort of Christian empire, but again, he was driven by a kind of religious zeal. And the reason why, I bring that up, and of course, Christopher Columbus sought to, bring the natives in the Caribbean over into Christ. I won't get off into the whole thing, because a lot of folks, again, have complete and utter misconceptions about Christopher Columbus, even so-called conservatives. To go back to the title of the live stream, the problem with black conservatives, they don't even understand and know the real story and history of Christopher Columbus. Like I said, I won't get into it, but the reason why I brought it up is because I was doing the live one time, and Mitch came in the live, and I don't know, I had made a point, I referenced the Bible, I said something about Christianity or faith or something like that, and of course he went to what a lot of black activists go to, that is that the Bible and Christianity is used, or was used, to enslave people, and it's used to keep black people down, and this, that, and third, because of course one of the central themes of the Christian faith is of course forgiveness, and forgiveness to folks like them is what makes the black community weak, because they refuse to forgive. And to Blanche's point, he said that I guarantee you, if you ask any of those people how they feel, even if they wouldn't tell you, they don't believe in God. Blanche said it, and I've had one-on-one interactions with Mitch himself, and again, he went after the Bible and attacked and talked about how Christianity was used to justify slavery, and it was used to again keep slaves subservient, which is complete and utterly false. It is patently false. Again, and so they again just secular worldview. They don't believe in God. They hate God and everything that
they hate
that
God and they hate themselves.
And they hate themselves because of that. Because of that, you hate God, you're going to hate yourself, right?
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like when it comes to this kind of covetous attitude that a lot of Black people have, this kind of envy that they have of other people groups, and the Asians and everyone else. Like they hate themselves. They hate that they don't have what these other people have. And I've studied this myself when it comes to one of these words that, and thank you, by the way, Miss Littleton and Cam B for the super stickers. I really appreciate it. But when it comes to the this term generational wealth, a lot of Black activists like to throw this word around, and the narrative goes as follows: because of slavery and Jim Crow, we don't have any generational wealth. And so therefore we need reparations in order to repair the damages, the psychological damages and the material damages that are the effects of the legacy of slavery and Jim Crow. And I've looked into this myself, and what I found, and this is, it's not like I have this kind of pristine insight. This is there for your reading, for your viewing. You can find this stuff in archives. You can find this stuff all over the place. One of the websites that I recommend is archive.org. You can find a lot of out of print books there. You can find a lot of records there that keeps track of this information. Hell, even the Marxist.org archive website have a lot of this information in their own writing. So
yes,
again,
right.
You can find all this information. It's there for your viewing. But anyway, as it specifically pertains to slavery, after slavery ended in the South, this weird thing happened, namely that slave holders who had released their slaves because they were obligated to do so by law sent their slaves on their way with money in their pocket. That is, that they sold off a lot of their possessions and they divvied up the money to their slaves and sent them along their way, gave them land. See, we like to talk about 40 acres in a mill, 40 acres in a mill. The fact is, there were slaveholders who were giving their former slaves land without any kind of mandate by the government to do so. That was actually happening. When it comes to a lot of your Black colleges and universities, like Howard, like Tuskegee, guess where a lot of this money was coming from? The children of former slaveholders. Who, for the sake of peace and stability in the Southern land, who, they, with the desire to see the races getting along, they went into their own pockets and they donated to Black schools. And so while you're sitting there talking about reparations, the narrative and the premise that you're operating from is this notion that there wasn't anything done on the private sector to make right or to set these former slaves up for success. And so they, again, went on their way, and many of them did so with money in their pocket to establish lives for themselves. And not only that, once people like Booker T. Washington came into the mix, along with the Tuskegee Machine, along with the Negro Business League and other such organizations, you had this kind of trend of excellence, of entrepreneurship. And a lot of Black people were well on their way, establishing themselves, building neighborhoods, building suburban neighborhoods where they had nice, well-manicured lawns and painted houses and all the rest of it. Again, all this stuff is well documented. They were engaging in commerce within their own communities. They weren't seeking for someone else to take care of them. To the extent that they weren't able to get raw materials to build and to do other such things because they didn't have a Home Depot on every, corner like we do here in the 21st century. They were making the raw materials themselves because they had the skills to do so. Tuskegee, they couldn't find bricks anywhere, so they made their own bricks. And they were able to sell those bricks to other people, including white folks. And so you did have this generational wealth that was being built. They started businesses. They set themselves up quite nicely. Once the 70s came around and we began to be attracted by the rhetoric of people like Huey P. Newton, of people like H. Rap Brown, of people like people like Stokely Carmichael, who later changed his name to Kwame Ture. We began to embrace this kind of say it loud, I'm black and I'm proud kind of mentality that rejected the traditional way of setting yourself up. We began to be attracted and intrigued by this kind of Marxist rhetoric that rejected private ownership of property, that rejected quote unquote capitalism, that rejected Western ideals. And we began to engage in this kind of self-indulgence culture. And as such, to the extent that your black parents inherited houses and lands, what they did is they liquidated those assets and they went on vacation. And they bought cars and they bought things that didn't really produce anything. It was just consumption. They consumed. And that's why you don't have your generational wealth. It's not because of slavery. It's not because of Jim Crow. It's because it was wasted and it was squandered in the 1970s and the 80s. That's why. And so when you don't have a cultural, the kind of intercultural education of saving, of putting money up, of investing, of all the things, when you don't have the cultural training of studying, then 2 or 3 generations from now, your children are not going to be set up for success. Your descendants are not going to be set up for success. It's to the extent that you pour into your children, that you invest in your children as a continuation of what your father and what your grandfather did. It's only to that extent that your children are going to be set up for success. When you reject what dad and granddad did, and you decide here and now to go the Marxist way, yes, your children and their children are going to be complaining about the system, and they're going to completely forget the fact that it was you who switched the trajectory, who switched it up, and now you're in a place where you don't know which way is up. Brandon Tatum, this is the last point that I'll make before I give it back to Blanche. Brandon Tatum, when I was interviewing him, and I think I made this point in another live, so forgive me if I'm sounding like a broken record, but when I was interviewing him for Uncle Tom Part 2, he told the story of how growing up in Stop 6 Fort Worth, which is pretty, it's the hood for all intents and purposes. Mm-hmm. Whenever he went to a funeral because a relative died, he got to see relatives from his family, extended relatives, who he never even knew existed. These were successful doctors, lawyers, architects, and here his family was in the corner of the church, all thugged out, tattoos, tall tees, such and so forth. And after he dug a little bit, what he found is that his father not his father, I think it was his grandfather or somebody, was the black sheep of the family. He was the one that rejected the values of the family, who decided to become a drug addict, who decided to go his own way. And he, had children, and then his children had children, and now they found themselves in Stop 6. Meanwhile, everybody else who's a part of their family who did well for themselves, they're the ones who are actually doing it. And so you get this kind of anger, this kind of rage against the system, and you completely sleep on the fact that it's because of something that happened culturally within your bloodline, within your family line, that caused the fix that you're in. It's just convenient that slavery existed in America, that Jim Crow existed in America, and so you can find something to blame, when in reality, no, it's all what you're doing, and it's all what your dad or granddad did. So the moment you begin to understand that, the moment you begin to understand that history, the moment you realize, like, wow, I have to stop complaining and I have to get my own butt into gear if I'm going to have any kind of success, because playing this blame game only makes me look like a fool to the general public, and it sets me behind, immediately speaking, and it sets my children behind long-term speaking.
To piggyback on what you just said, Chad, I remember Killer Mike was being interviewed, and he was asked about like gentrification and stuff like that, and he said the truth behind the matter is that black people sold those houses that were passed down. They let them go into. They didn't pay the taxes. Like he basically said that black people dropped the ball when it came down to passing down these homes because the homes were, bought by their grandparents, and so they didn't want to stay in those neighborhoods. Black folks want to move out and leave and go to the suburbs and do all this other stuff. So you're 100% correct. Like I say, when I was growing up, there was no old person that I knew that didn't own their own home. All the old people had homes. And I'm just like, I never saw this black impoverished thing because at least your grandparents had a house. Everybody's grandparents had a house.
Right.
Worst case scenario, my mom had a house. Most of my friends' moms had houses, even in these inner cities. But you're right, though. I think Joe just said that they almost make your blackness by how poor you are. So the poorer you are, the more black you are. The more closer you are to poverty and death and the hood, the quote unquote blacker you are. It's funny that you said that about Tatum because it makes sense. The real history is that his father chose to abandon the values of everybody else. And the result is his
grandfather, though. But go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry, his grandfather. But the result is it affected a generation, though. That one decision has everybody growing up in this part of town. And then so when folks tell the story, they're going to say, oh, it's racism and all this stuff. No, it wasn't. It was actually the decisions of the person choosing an ideology, choosing a narrative, choosing convenience over what's right. So, yeah, I mean, I agree with you.
All right. Chuck, you want to go ahead and close it out?
Oh, we closing out? Oh, shoot. I see, Chad, you really hate them tall tees, boy. I know you say. I hated them too, man. I couldn't stand. I was never into that. Yeah,
I used to wear them. I hated them.
Hey, Blanche, I gotta see pictures of you with your braids and a tall tee. Like,
oh man, listen, I'm
gonna go a bonus point if I can get them together.
Listen, I'm gonna send you pictures of the tall tee, all of them. I'm seeing everything. You're gonna be like, what in the world? Foolish. Oh my goodness, foolish.
Did you have spinners too?
Nah, I mean I had black Air Force Ones though. Black Air Force Ones. I had a few old schools, man. Oh man, it was foolish. I was so foolish. I was so foolish. Listen, man, it's crazy. I've come a long way, man.
All right, go ahead. Take it away, Chuck.
No, but I said it way back earlier in the live. Just trust the process, man. I mean, when I say just trust the process and just keep going back and running the same play over and over again, and eventually you're going to, boom, take off. It's just like there are no shortcuts, right? And do not abandon, right, the principles that have gotten us here. You said that a lot of slave owners or former slave owners were willingly, right, giving, and that's how that's how you do it, right? That's how you bring about, a better society is willful interaction, a willingness to do for others based upon, right, a Christian ethic. And there it is, if we you have the state, or you have the private. So you have the civil society, or you have the government. You cannot leapfrog again the internal transformation that has to happen within each individual. Because if you just rage against the machine because you feel as though you haven't gotten your just due, then that just makes for a society just full of misery, right? Because the people, we are the ones who make the society what it is. You get a bunch of angry, resentful, disgruntled folks, and of course they're going to try to seize the levers of power so they can then dispense all of their bile and vitriol out onto the rest of us. And we just end up living in a society that's again unbearable and full of misery. Right. So just, no matter what, man, just get. And if you feel as though, you're oppressed, you're this, you're that, blah, 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 we know it's all nonsense. But again, there was a certain level of dignity and honor and self-respect that Black folks had once upon a time. And what is it going to take to get back to that? I'm not entirely sure. Maybe what we're doing here, the three of us and the folks in the chat, maybe we are, a part of this change that can happen over time. Of course, we probably won't live to see it, and maybe our children won't live to see it. Who knows? But again, man, that's what needs to happen, and again, man, that's why we're here.
Amen.
Some people keep asking questions. What's wrong with Black conservatives? Because I got my IG over here. Just
I guess the people came in late.
Yeah, some folks came in late.
What's the problem with Black conservatives?
Should I play that clip again, or just answer the question, or what?
Probably just answer it, I guess.
Right, answer the question. Yeah.
No, I mean, so basically, I guess it would be better to kind of give context to just play the clip. It's only like 20 seconds long, so I'll just play that. Okay, so I'm open to being attacked for the things I say, but
Chad Jackson, he's a fellow Black.
Okay, that's weird. I'm going to do that again. Give me 1 second. Okay, so I'm open to being attacked for the things I say, but
Chad Jackson, he's a fellow Black conservative. He said something that is just pretty asinine. It shocked me as a Black conservative because it's one of the dumbest things that I've ever heard. Why should you care about whether or not someone is racist? If no one's told you this, you're Black, buddy. And there's people out there who don't like you strictly because you're Black. When you speak like that, that is why people call us coons. That's why people call us Uncle Times. That's why people call us sellouts. Because you think like you don't have to care about racism, like it doesn't impact you. It impacts you when you go in and out of places and people are saying and doing things when you're not there.
Now, not only did you miss the mark. Okay. So yeah, that's in part what I was responding to. I was going to do a montage of some of your favorite Black Republicans saying things that are very leftist. People like Kim Klacik. People like what's that? The Black senator Tim Scott. People like.
I already do it. Yep.
People
He's one of the worst.
Yep. People like a bunch of Black Republicans who are Republican first. Mind you, a lot of these people are not Christians. They do not believe in God. They don't. Their message, their gospel is Republican. The Republican Party is going to save everything. And don't get me wrong, I vote Republican because in this binary of American politics, you either have to vote for the Republican or the Democrat. And when it comes down to the party's platforms, the Republican Party platform aligns more with my values than does the Democrat Party. And so I vote for Republican politicians, but I am in no means a partisan person. I am a Christian first and foremost. My Christianity, my faith, the Bible, the Holy Spirit informs how I see literally everything. But when it comes to this subsect of Black Republicans, these conscious Black conservatives, again, they start and they end with party, with political party. And as such, to the extent that a person like me comes along, or Blanche, or Chuck, because our values are different, because we go deeper, because we call out the problems as they actually are, we get attacked not only from those on the left, but also from those on the quote unquote right. And so that lets you know, and Chuck and I were talking earlier, and I'm thinking we're getting ready to go into this in a much more deeper way. And I'm talking going back as far as the Enlightenment, the French Revolution, the American Revolution, all this different stuff to give you insight into where we are today. Because in order to understand what's going on right now, you first have to understand what went on in the past. And so for those of you who want to nerd out, that material will be ready for you soon. Also going to be ready for you soon is a short little documentary that I'm putting together with footage from the last live I did with Blanche, Chuck, and Keisha. There was this golden moment in that live where Keisha asked Chuck or asked Blanche the question about, black identity and black culture. And Blanche, per usual, knocked it out of the park. And then Chuck added to it, and then I added to it, and then Keisha added to it, and it just made for this very pristine golden moment. And I was able to get sources, to get B-roll. I'm going to put together like a little 10-20 minute documentary that's going to be available for y'all soon, just based upon that segment of the live as well. But Blanche, you have anything you wanted to add to the whole black?
Oh yeah, I just wanted to say that that's what we meant with the problem with black conservatives is they actually have the same ideologies as black liberals and on major talking points. And so the guy was saying, because Chad said that he didn't care about racism, that made other people call black conservatives coons. But if you think about it, why would we concern ourselves with racism? Like, I don't think about racism when I wake up in the morning. I don't. Like, when I'm going throughout my day, I don't think about anybody oppressing me and holding me back. It doesn't even cross my mind. So, but a lot of conservatives, now, who's that one lady? She was on The View and she said, he was like, "You're a Republican," and she was like, "I'm a black woman before."
Yeah, she was also in a montage. Yeah.
I don't know who that is, but that right there is what he's talking about. Like, if you're black before you're Republican, then you're really a liberal there, because the black ideology goes with all that other victimization and all this other stuff. So when she said that, what she's really saying is, I'm not really a Republican. I'm only a Republican because y'all are just too far to the left. You know, but,
they don't stand on principle, man, because many of them don't really know what true conservatism is, you know, black, white. But since we're talking about the black ones in particular, again, they don't know what that means. They don't know what that entails. And when you're talking about conservatism, you owe a debt to those that paved the way. Blanche, I heard you say something a while back when you were talking about how all these people be talking about the system and this and that and how horrible it was in the past. And you said something to the effect, I thought it was brilliant. You were like, but nevertheless, in spite of all of that, you're here. You're here now. You got here some way, somehow. And there's a long lineage, a long history, a tradition of folk, of thinkers, of systems, of government, and so on and so forth, that you owe yourself. I mean, you owe it to yourself to understand the girth, the legacy that you've inherited. And too often, again, folks just say, well, we'll just do and say whatever it takes to get more folk to vote Republican. We'll do and say whatever it takes to get more folk to support Trump, to show you that Trump can do things that, you know, leading Democrats have been saying that they are going to do for years and have never done it. Look, this is what conservatism is. It means winning against it. It means simply, you know, posting and promoting and putting out things showing you how ridiculously absurd the left has become. Let's talk about drag queens and transgender this and that and so on and so forth. And it's like, okay, but that's easy, right? But what does it actually mean to be a conservative, and what makes for a healthy society? How do you build a society that is worth living in when you have billions upon billions of people with disparate talents, ambitions, goals, wants, and needs? How do you get them to live collectively, albeit, or get them to live collectively, but civilly, right? And in a situation where, again, you know, people can have their needs largely met without, because again, sometimes what you want is at the expense of what someone else wants, and so on and so forth. And so what do we do about that? How do we build? How do we do that? And so many folks just take it for granted. They just think it's easy. And it's not easy. And that's what it means to me. And that's what the problem with black conservatism is. There's this lack of understanding. Yeah. This complete lack of understanding. It's about winning it's about trolling the libs and making a fool of and I'm sorry, but that's not it. That's not enough. It's not gonna cut it. It's not gonna cut it. I can't watch but so many drag queens dancing in front of kids. I can't do it. I can't watch but so many times.
It's like they all complain about the same things. Right.
It's taught they all complain about the same thing. They all say the same things. Then it's like, okay, well, are you familiar with Friedrich Hayek? No. Are you familiar with Milton Friedman? No. I've heard Tom
Sowell. Do you know what they're doing with education? Do you know it?
Exactly.
Come on now.
It's absurd.
It's very absurd. And the thing is like, and this is why I'm excited about Uncle Tom Part 3, because we're about to put everybody on notice. And, the guys that you see sitting up on this panel, they're going to be in it as well. But we're going to talk about, quote unquote, black identity and blackness and where this notion comes from. One of the things that Blanche talks about all the time, this notion that that blackness is the end all be all. And this fact that they're communicating to children how to be black. And they're using that as political leverage to push a worldwide global agenda. That's what's going on. And so to the extent that and this is why I love having Blanche and Chuck and Keisha, like they all bring perspective that's rooted in knowledge and wisdom and discernment. They're not just talking about, well, the Democrats did this and the Democrats did that. Like they're going deeper. And these are the kinds of conversations I like. I don't like just this kind of surface run of the mill. Well, Trump said this, and this is why we need to get behind it because Trump said it. Or the Democrats did this, and we're not going to support it because the Democrats, no, it's not about Republican and Democrat. It's much more deeper than that. It's a matter of good versus evil. That's what it comes down to. The Bible says that that Satan comes to steal, kill, and destroy, and he does it through various means, through various methods, through various philosophies. And the fact is, we live in a time where this thing, secularism, is being pushed on multiple levels, and you have been conditioned to believe it's a good thing. There's people in the church that believe that secularism is a good thing because when you had a theocracy, people were being oppressed, and at least in a secular world, people aren't being oppressed because people can live out their faith and do all the things that they want to do. And the thing is you need law and order, and you have to base that law and order on something. You have to base it on something, and you're either going to base it on the biblical truth, God's truth, or you're going to base it up on some man's idea and version of morality and virtues and so on and so forth. And what we saw throughout the 20th century is men who came under the guise of liberators, of revolutionaries, whether you saw it in Russia, whether you saw it in Vietnam, whether you saw it in Cuba, whether you saw it in Korea, whether you saw it in various parts throughout Africa, whether you saw it here in the United States under people like FDR and LBJ and even some of your favorite Republican politicians. Don't get it twisted. This isn't just a one-side party thing. And so there's many people who came over the course of the 20th century pushing ideology, pushing philosophy and public policy based upon nothing but their own wit. And they've caused more damage than they have benefits, than they have good. This is very Tower of Babel-esque. Man thinking that we can build a city based upon nothing but our own wit, and we can forget God, we can reject God, we can just do it on our own. The only thing that can come from that is calamity. We see it in the book of Jonah when God was about to judge Nineveh. But what did the king do? He issued a decree that everybody repents, puts on sackcloth and ashes. Everybody, even the animals, the Bible says. Even the animals have to put on sackcloth and ashes and repent. And what happened? God's judgment passed over Nineveh because they repented. So you can call me a Christian nationalist, you can call me whatever you want, but you can't call me wrong. The fact is, we are all in danger of God's judgment, and the only thing, literally the only thing that can save you from it is repentance and putting your trust in Christ. That's the only thing. That's it. That's all. And so I'm going to talk about that, and I'm going to talk about the cultural defects as a result of trusting in man and trusting in hollow and deceptive philosophies rather than trusting in God. And some of it might have a political nature to it. But please understand that I'm not advocating for the Republican Party. I'm not advocating for a specific politician. I'm advocating for what's right. And as such, I will often be at odds with some of your favorite black conservatives who are preaching a different message. Blanche, I'll give you the last word and then we'll call it a night.
I mean, I'll just say this. it's an honor and a privilege to be, on these shows with you all. In the future, people will, dig up these videos and dig up all this content, and people like you and Chuck are going to be the true historians. You're going to be, if ever there's a future revolution, folks will be listening to you all. You've done a great disservice with us by giving us this false history or withholding the true history from us. But you all actually go into uncovering all of it. So I just want to say it's an honor to be on this panel with you all. And I really mean it when I say they're going to dig up this stuff in the future, and you guys are going to be what they're listening to hopefully, I don't know, go rage against the real machine. I don't know. But hopefully what we're doing now does benefit those in the future.
I appreciate you saying that. So like I said, I will put out that small, that short doc, maybe here in about a month. I'm working on it. I get excited and goosebumps every time I work on it. Again, Blanche knocks it out the park on it. He's the star of it. And Blanche, you see him wearing that shirt, Worship God, Not Man. I do have those for sale again for a limited time from now until April 3rd. You can find them on my IG. You can find them on chadojackson.com. I'm wanting to put together a resource where everybody who are part of these panels can benefit monetarily. I don't want to bring people like Chuck and Blanche and Keisha on here and have them spend their time on these lives for free. I want to be able to compensate them monetarily for their time because what they do is worth it. So I'm trying to find ways to monetize that. So again, thank you all for watching. Thank you all for the super chats. I see that some of them came in. Khalil, thank you for the super sticker. I think I saw one earlier from someone with the last name Singleton. Thank you for Idris. Am I pronouncing that right? Singleton, thank you for that. Thank you to also the moderators, Angel, Lady T, I think, and I think there was one other moderator that I had here tonight. But thank y'all all for your contribution. Thank you for making this live a reality. I know that when I started doing these lives originally, it was rusty. My internet was poor. It kept chopping out. It was just a mess, just a crazy mess. But, I'm starting to get better at it. So thank y'all for bearing with me. Also, shout out to K-Dub, who was in the comment section a little late. I need to get him in on some of these lives at some point because he has good takes and good perspective as well. So Keisha and Craig couldn't stay with us the entire night, but that's all good. Hope they're having a good night with their families. So anyway, this has been Chad, Chuck, and Blanche. We love y'all. Have a good evening.